so wide awake, overanalyzing the mistakes. And am I one? Well, who's to say? Seconds passing and I'm wide awake. Why can't I shut up my brain? It's been 3 weeks and I still can't sleep in my bed. Blame it on all the voices in my head. They're telling me that I'll be better off dead. Blame it on the monsters under my bed. Please me, how can I be sleepy? All I can think about are these infinite doubts. I'm an idiot, I'm full of shit, and everybody knows it. Why is my existence such a crime? I can't get my mind off my mind, running in circles like it's a circus. But these animals are feeling nervous. Seconds passing and I'm wide awake. Why can't I shut up my brain? It's been 3 weeks and I still can't sleep in my bed. Blame it on the voices in my head, telling me that I'll be better off dead. Blame it on the monsters under my bed. And I see, but I can't believe what I've read. Could it be that I might have been misled? I close my eyes, but I'm wide awake instead. Blame it on the monsters under my bed. Hey, hey. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Am I just delirious, or is there something serious? And I should see a doctor, but I don't think they'd understand us. And I've got a confession, I've got a condition, and under these conditions I'm wishing I wasn't. Well, it's been 3 weeks and I still can't sleep in my bed. Blame it on all the voices in my head. They're telling me that I'll be better off dead. Blame it on the monsters under my bed. And I see, but I can't believe what I've read. Could it be I might have been misled? Close my eyes, but I'm wide awake instead. Blame it on the monsters under my bed. 'cause someone's had it all. You don't know when you got nothing to lose. That's what you told me. As I recall, on the end that we show it to colors and frankly, my love, yours is black. Once you figure all this out and come back on your knees and say that you realize I'm not coming back. Oh, not at this time. Now that you're gone. Welcome to a domain where nothing weird is likely to happen. Flee while you still can. For fun, here is strictly forbidden. There's no playing piano with your feet, nor baking a cake without treat. No tech problems whatsoever. This is a pro streamer. And the no nonsense stream, and everything you've ever wanted it to be. The no nonsense stream you truly deserve. With the no nonsense queen, and everything you never wanted her to be. The no nonsense stream. But hold for this is serious.
Hi.
Hello guys.
Oh, I lost my good lighting.
You have good lighting here? Oh, of course you
Yes.
can. Started with snapping Veld. So there's something on Andy's stream. She has a snapping that I actually snap people in the chat, so it times them out. So you can, everybody can request that. So Veld has been snapped for
Val.
yes, Jojo Veld, I think his real name is. So hi. Yeah, I've
R.I.P. Val.
Yeah, for 123 seconds. That's too bad. So hi guys. Yeah, we're not at Andy's place today. Weirdly, she didn't want me to come to her place anymore, so she sent me to Ottawa.
It's okay, because me and Celine here are best friends.
Yeah, well, actually, it's the first time I meet you, and I have a good vibes going from way better than what I've had from Andy. So for those who are new on my channel, because right now it is Celine's takeover, so it's Celine the Frenchie.
Oh, we still have reverb on. Can you give me the
you do?
mouse? Oui. Oui.
Oh, there.
There we go.
Nerd subscribe. Oh.
We'll just have to remember when we sing to turn it back down.
Okay, perfect.
If we sing.
We probably will.
If you
Way
are
more.
deserving of our voices.
Are they deserving of the voices? Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're not.
Guess we'll
Minus
find
20 dB. Are we not? Maybe we are a little
No, I
bit
fixed
low.
it now.
You fixed it?
Yeah, look at, you can see we're like almost in the red if we're talking loud.
Oh, but we don't talk loud. Well, not me. Not compared to Andy. So hi guys. So for those who wanted to see Andy today, I am sorry she's not there for the moment, and she might not be there for the whole stream. Depends on how things are going.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Mermaid Unicorn who's here, but decided to, well,
It's my alter ego.
and how would you call your alter ego? Oh, of course. Sometimes when I do, yes, that backfired.
What?
It's one of my hexes, but once in a while it backfires and it goes like that instead. Yeah, I really hate
That
it.
was creepy.
Aya Kane, thank you for the 666 bits. Sorry that one backfired. Normally my hexes are flawless. Of course, the first one is
Yeah.
practice, so sometimes it does that.
Yeah. I guess I'd be like Skullmaid Deathicorn.
Skull made Dufficorn. I kind
I'll
of
come
like
up-
that.
I'll come up with another one.
No, I like it. So here we are, Celine and Skull made Dufficorn. The
Ooh, or
more
just Deathica.
Deathica is a
Deathica.
great name for for an alter ego. Not that you are. That's what happened. I got to Canada and don't get a chance to see either of you. Of course, the hex get backfired. Of course it does. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's genuinely frightening.
I know. That normally I do the hexes on the stream while Andy streams. I don't get double hexed on my own.
You're
stream.
immune to your own powers.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. There is
course.
one poison gas. Like, normally, when Andy is on stream and I do the poison gas thing, if she doesn't have her cloth close, it will poison her, and I take her place. But right now, no way I'm going to get poisoned by my own poison.
Yes, of course not.
But if she comes in my body, sometimes she does that, and it's really annoying, super annoying. One way to bring me back is to actually do these hexes. So if you drive me away, because some people are, let's just say they're arse holes, and they drive me away. I don't.
We have to be PG today, don't we?
Oh yeah, and most of the time. If you let slip once in a while, I don't really mind, because it's not my stream, it's Andy's. But there are some children and kids watching, and I prefer the money still coming my way. So and by the way, today Andy's getting no money. It's all coming to me and Deathika.
Yeah.
So please put it our way.
So we can afford more ingredients for our seances.
And what we are going to do, if I know that a few of you guys hate the cat piano, and lastly you've had a cat piano stream with Mermaid Unicorn and Andy, so we decided that if we reach $666, we will have a cat piano sacrifice. So a special ritual which won't destroy the cat piano totally, but it will transform its what it does for course. Veld.
I got the perfect picture right where that was happening.
What? That is actually frightening. Damn.
Literally right as I was taking the picture, the alert popped up. Why is it?
Oh, that's another of my hexes. It makes
It's just black screen of death.
pitch black.
We go away.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgot the post.
So yeah, if we get to for some reason, it doesn't add up. So that's not supposed to happen.
What
it's
doesn't
supposed to
add?
In the goal. Why?
It's supposed to add the bits as well.
It is supposed to add at least the donations. But for some
Wait, did we
reason
get a donation?
Yeah, from Veld.
Veld
Went with
I thought you were banned.
Yeah, he was banned for 100 and something seconds.
Thank you. I guess you can still communicate from the grave when you're banned if you donate.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Of course they can. Why
Cat piano curse the donut goal. That's fair. That's fair. We've had a lot of cat piano action these past few days, and
yeah, we did.
We figured it was time for it to go.
Okay, so one thing, it doesn't seem to do it. So I'll set it up on somewhere else, and that way it will definitely work. So, and the widgets, dono. All right, donation goal.
That's creepy though, because that thing only pops up for like a fraction of a second.
It does.
And I caught it.
Yeah, you were really quick on that one.
And the hex went like right on top of your body. Like, how did you plan it that way?
No, I don't.
Because like, look at that.
I know it wasn't planned.
That's so creepy.
It wasn't planned.
I'm scared.
But that's the thing with here. The curse is just following me wherever I go. So
fair.
We just go with it here. Cat piano sacrifice. Wait, somebody else. Something else. Oh, okay. So that's Sirius. You missed it.
Oh.
Sirius is another.
They're covered in slime.
Yes, and he really likes me for some reason. Like Sirius is.
I can see that.
Yeah, me too. But I haven't said yes to his tries, numerous tries. Maybe he will appear again. Pencils is the one who I think he's Pencil's cousin or something like that. They look really a lot alike, except Sirius has a lot of black makeup. He just worships me, so he tries to look like me a lot.
Yeah, gotta love copycats.
Yes, but I try to think of it as flattering because you want to copy what you like and what you. So I think that is not stopping. Okay, that was a flies. So
that was Nerd.
Yes,
Nerd. Thank you for the beautiful flies. They remind me of corpses.
Yes, they do. They're quite nice too. People don't like. All right, so let's go with 6 and 66, and no, we have ×2. So you know what, guys? I'll give you a 16 and 66 to start with, because I'm generous that way. And after that, 2. All right, start goal, copy.
I can do a song while you set that up.
Yeah, do that.
Hey, yeah.
knows me better than I know myself, so I'm gonna let her do all the talking. Ooh, ooh.
Reverb.
And I came across a place in the middle of nowhere with a big black horse and a cherry tree. Ooh, ooh. I fed a little fuel from my back. He said, don't look back, just keep on walking. Ooh, ooh. The big black horse said, look this way. He said, hey, lady, will you marry me? Ooh, ooh. But I said, no, 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 no. I said, no, no, you're not the one for me. I said, no, 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 no. I said, no, no, you're not the one for me. Ooh, ooh, not the one for me. Ooh, ooh. And I went to bed in the early hours, so I stopped it down for a beat or two. Ooh, ooh. But I got some color and I should have done it, and won't forget me after all these years. Ooh. So I stayed to a place in the middle of nowhere with a big black horse and a cherry tree. Ooh, ooh. Now I won't come back 'cause it's all so happy, and now I got a hole full of well sea. Ooh. And I said no, 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 no. I said no, no, you're not the one for me. I said no, 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 no. I said no, no, you're not the one for me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, I said big black horse and a cherry tree. Yeah. I can't quite get there 'cause my heart's forsaken me. Yeah. Big black horse and a cherry tree. I can't quite get there 'cause my heart's forsaken me. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So I said no, 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 no. I said no, no, you're not the one for me. I said no, 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 no. I said no, no, you're not the one for me. Not the one for me.
Nice.
I just realized this microphone is like right in the way. We're just gonna.
Oh boy. It's okay. Okay, I have to take care
It
of
doesn't
something.
exist anymore.
It doesn't. What exists anymore? What exists? Anyway.
Existential dread.
Oh, yes, that's true. It never
It's
stops.
gotta exist in the name too.
So much good.
I'm Mermaid Unicorn.
Yeah,
you might
they are.
recognize me if I had rainbow hair and probably pastel clothes. But today I'm Deathica.
Deathica, and also they have
AKA
their,
Merm Satan.
yes, and
there's
they have
an
their
emote
own
of me.
their
I have
own
my own
channel.
emote.
Just normally there's a button just there if you want to follow them. So they have their own little follow button. Please go follow them for lots of fun and darkness and sometimes joy, although I don't condone that too much. How's your selfie game today?
I tried, but I can never get the right, because my front camera sucks.
Oh, it
And
does?
the back camera is fine, but then I have to like try and, so I did a TikTok though.
But with that face, even
Oh.
with bad lighting, it cannot go bad.
Oh, I forgot to do my face spray.
Okay, what is
Wait,
that?
what did you do?
I wonder why it was. Ah, that's better. Pastel goth? Yeah, we can pass.
I
as
am a pastel goth. I mean, Mermaid Unicorn is a pastel goth.
Yeah.
A retired goth, if you will.
Oh, you are.
Yeah. You think I just bought these clothes to dress up? No, this is what I used to wear.
Oh, but that's gorgeous. Why would you want? Would you not want to wear that every day? I would. I am not your cheapskate goth. I will wear things that are just beautiful. Not if you've seen Andy's stream, she only wears PJs and
Yeah, and t-shirts.
geek shirts, and she doesn't wear any makeup.
Onesies occasionally.
Yes, and she just doesn't really take care of her body, so always a little bit of a pain in the arse when she
Right.
comes in.
She's always eating those chickens and
Turn
all
up
the
my
pad
trade
thai.
stream. Just people don't send any foods. Just I'll tell them.
yeah. If you send food, it'll just
Yeah,
not
so the
get eaten.
Maybe
Maybe by raccoons.
So for the people who will want to send food, you can do
Send it to Mermaid Unicorn.
send it to.
We
there.
tried to set up a food where we could both have a food, but the limit is $30,
Yes.
and you can barely feed one person for $30. So
Yes.
if you just send us foods for my stream, but not pizza. We had pizza last night, and we still have pizza in the fridge. Don't send pizza,
We do.
or I will.
And also, is
mail
your
it to
stream
you.
still there? Because we do have to enable it for 30 minutes of stream.
Oh, I didn't do that. I forgot.
Let's do
That was
it.
the whole reason we went on there.
Yes.
I was
so
like busy shopping for treats. I forgot to do the offline thing.
we'll do it.
I don't know the Hocus Pocus song.
There it is. I do.
So
We can
you
do it
can-
together.
I've never heard it before.
It is beautiful. If you want, you can have a little bit of a harmonizing in the back.
I don't really watch like fiction. I only watch like murder documentaries. So like
That's actually better. I don't like any music normally. Not music, but any magic other than my own. This is one of the thing I don't like. But the music is quite good though.
I see.
Beautiful. Thank you, Squirrel Brain. Elena wants that huge sandwich again. Oh, this is
huge
there a huge
sandwich?
sandwich?
Rogue Snake, I don't know what you're talking about.
I
Oh,
know-
you mean the chicken Caesar that was like, it was like 12 inches long and 12 inches in girth.
Jeez, how did you fit that in your mouth? Oh my
Like
god, you're full of surprises.
Lots of tricks
Alright.
up in my gloves.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes.
No sleeves today.
Yeah, today we're going sleeveless.
Oh my god.
Who gets steak?
People keep getting banned.
Yes.
Does
they
it get
keep
more
getting snapped.
expensive every time, or is it this the same?
No, it's just because I'm there. All right.
Do you know Prejudice song? I don't know that.
Dang. Okay, let's start with the Hocus Pocus because it's actually an easy one to do, and you could. It's a little more.
Okay.
It's a little bit like Anastasia. Once Upon a December.
Don't know
Have
that
you
song.
heard
either.
that? Na, 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 but I don't.
Okay,
play
maybe I do
music.
know that one.
But okay, so this.
We can
the
scooch this
Hocus-
over. If you move the table over just a bit,
Yeah, we can definitely.
that should help.
Let's make it so we can see it a bit.
There. Wow.
Okay. All right.
They don't need to see the piano. They can see us. That's all they need.
That's true. Who needs a piano? So it is quite easy to take. So if you want to harmonize something, go for it. If you want to just go with your gut or goth, that's also.
Or I can just sit here and stare at the
You
camera.
can just freak them out a little bit. They'll love it. What I am not going to give your channel, Andy. You told me that I could get it today, so I'm not giving you back your channel. Maybe I'm not going to give you back your channel ever. Come, little children, I'll take thee away into a land of enchantment. Come, little children, the time will come to play here in my garden of shadows. Follow, sweet children, I'll show ye the way through all the pain and the sorrows. Weep not, poor children, for life is this way, murdering this way, weary of life and deception. Rest now, my children, for soon we'll away into the calm and the quiet. Come, little children, I'll take thee away into a land of enchantment. Come, little children, the time come to play here in my garden of shadow. There. That's a very neat song for the.
Forgot to put the reverb back on. Can you move the mouse over here so I can?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so did you do the offline treat thing?
I did. So you have 24 minutes. If somebody wants to send us food, you have 24 minutes to do it. How rude! Oh, did Andy time out pencils? Of course she did. You gave me money, pencils. Of course she's mad at it. She won't.
Yay!
Oh, foods.
Food.
Like, who sent food?
I didn't get no food. Who are you sending food to? You sending it to
No,
Andy the Frenchie?
2 foods, I think. Oh,
Hey! So I'm just testing my limiter.
maybe. Do it.
Hey! Okay, we're good. We
Yeah,
can be
perfect.
loud now.
Perfect.
We
No,
can be
they
loud.
sent it. They sent it to your retreat stream. Normally, you should get some.
Oh, I
of-
did get a message. I
Oh.
just put my phone on silence because I prefer silence.
But oh no, please don't do any confettis. I don't like chaos.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What is this color on
It's-
my stream?
yeah, it's
Oh,
colorful.
you know what? I forgot. We can even do this if we just boo 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 boo. I know I have beautiful bronze skin, but we could also.
Of course,
That was creepy how it went on you and then it broke my face.
I know. I'm
Guys,
creepy
this
that
stream
way.
is cursed. It's even more cursed
Yeah, but it's
than the freaking
yeah, but
cat
it's what
piano
we
stream.
want. Oh, that's nice. I like that.
What, with the color?
Well, it's we still have to see my makeup. I did a lot of effort on that. So the only rouge I have put in here, I kind of like that.
Oops, that was.
Revenge tried to warn you. What? Ayakane got revenge, of course. There. So this is going on my stream normally, but we should keep. Okay, we could have that. People could redeem that for money because I am not going to give them for free.
The
We
color?
Yeah, we should keep a color and at some point if we reach some kind of like at
The more we
$66
get, the
and
darker we get.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that can be something. Like the
Mhm.
more and at 666 we're like, oh no. What is this? Get away! Guys, I'm supposed to be in a vacation. Guys, I don't want to be sitting today. Hi Merms. So Celine has lots of you've seen Charlie.
Evil
Charlie.
spirits be gone.
Oh no,
Be gone!
they made Celine go away, and now people in chat will be mad. Yes. So hi, I'm not Celine, I'm Indy.
What? I thought Andy went back to Montreal yesterday.
Yeah, she's supposed to be in Montreal, but okay. So when people, Celine has like 7 different weaknesses. She has dogs, kazoo, magic that's not her own, bad puns. I don't remember all of them, but she knows them. And when people trigger these magic or other things, dogs, she hates dogs. So when her oh, of course,
His fire.
you're trying to bring her away, and okay, I'm going back. It has again.
Beautiful.
So Andy was here for a few seconds. Well, guys, in Merm's place, I know. So who did that? Believer? Okay, Believer brought me back. Okay, Jojo Veld with a 666. Okay, so that would have brought me back. Yeah, Jojo Veld. definitely would bring me back with that because that's a poisonous gas.
I don't know what to do with this now. It's on fire. I can't really.
It's
put
on
it
fire.
down.
Well, you can put it on like a plate of some sort, maybe.
My ashtray is downstairs.
Oh, you go ahead.
Okay.
I can hold on to them in the meantime. All right. What do you want, guys? What do you want, you pleb? What have you asked? In a mug. Oh, hey, Manzanero. Thank you for the 889. Even if that got a stupid dog on the stream. Believer, thank you for bringing me back. And Jojo Veld, thank you too. The gothic horn lurking in the background. Yes, we have a few gothics thing here. Just we like that. Thanks for the food, by the way. Can't wait to get that here. Baby Shark, Merms love that song. Don't call Charlie stupid. It is stupid. It's a Chihuahua. Chihuahuas, all dogs are stupid, to be honest, but that dog seems even more stupid than the normal amount. Baby shark, baby shark, doo doo doo. Baby shark, baby shark,
No.
baby shark likes the blood. Grandpa shark will eat in your hands. Grandma shark will start on the bed. Baby shark, baby shark. Does Andy not like that song? It's a great song. Shark. There you are. I have a very special versions of songs. What is that?
It's a guess. What do you think it is?
I'm thinking something not PG, so I'll say a very, very small violin. It's a melodica.
It's an
Oh.
anime kit.
Anime kit. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. Oh,
Because sometimes you get plugged up,
yes, you do have to.
so you just.
So many snaps. There's a lot of snaps in there. Oh, that's great. Okay, what do we have in the song list? I know that Andy's have a song list, and I am not going to play all of their stupid songs like Disney stuff is not going to happen.
I got two. Someone sent. Did they hack the system?
Yes, they do that a lot on Andy's stream. If it works, we'll
Oh,
get
we
two
got
things.
cake
Cake.
and pizza.
Pizza.
More pizza.
It's okay. I can. I didn't eat any pizza. Andy did. I didn't. I put a spell on you by Hocus. That's by Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
Do you know that song?
Wait,
I put a spell on you.
That's not from Hocus Pocus.
It is.
No,
It is.
There
It
was
has-
somebody before Hocus Pocus. though.
Was it before Hocus Pocus? Oh,
Yes.
maybe Hocus Pocus has taken that song afterwards. That's very possible. So we have that. We have Only Humans. I'll probably play it later. Only Humans is the Death Note the musical I talked to you about yesterday.
I don't remember you being here yesterday.
Oh, maybe Andy has talked to you about Death Note the musical.
The what musical?
Death Note. Death Note is an anime.
Oh yes.
And there's a
Oh,
musical?
I love Death Note. It's
Yeah.
simply wonderful. All
It's
the death.
It's probably
the
the only
notes.
thing I have in common with Andy. Actually,
Yeah.
we both like Death Note, so we have a song in there from that. There's Defying Gravity, of course. I am not going to sing that because I don't like other magical things.
I'll try.
You could sing it.
Defying gravity.
You could do that.
I don't know the whole song. I just know like part of the words.
We'll do the part. It'll be enough for them. Nothing else matters too. So is there a song you'd like to do first?
Yeah, put a spell on you.
Yeah, that's a good
I know
one.
that one.
Perfect. What do you
I
want
mean,
to
I
do
need the
with it?
lyrics though.
Yes, I have the lyrics here.
I'll put a spell on you. Yeah, I have a Death Note painting right there. You see it?
Oh, that's a great one.
Yes, Ryuk.
That's Ryuk.
Yes,
I love how chaotic he is,
Yes,
but not chaotic
and
at
he's
the same
hot.
time.
He's very sexy.
He is kind of. I prefer Rem. I don't know. They have this little fierce kittens. Andy looks so different. I am not Andy. I'm Celine. That's why I look different. Oh, stop it with the. You know I don't like chaos. You're bad. Thank you. I put a spell on you. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's put that reverb. Is there a normal a button for the reverb?
For the reverb? Oh, sorry. Here, give me the mouse again.
If you show me where it is, I will try to. You have
Yeah, it's
multiple
just,
personalities.
so this is...
It is not multiple personalities. We have different bodies. I'm the only one who can get into Andy's body because I'm a little bit of a witch. And she can come into my body if you stupid pleb drive me away.
So the reverb was on.
It was on. See,
Yes.
we don't even need to take it off. we just reverb naturally. So let's have fun and sing together.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Okay. I'll put a spell on you.
Oh, just before. Zab Mathieu has resubscribed for 20 months. Thank you very much. And Torfaijo with 19 months in a row. Lots of where to go shop at. I am not going to read that. I know it's a bad pun. I am not going to read that. I don't want to go back. Let's go now.
I'll put a spell on you, and now you're mine. You can't stop the things that I do. I am. It's been 300 years. Right down to the day now the witch is back, and there's hell to pay. I put a spell on you, and now you're mine. Oh, you're mine.
I put a spell on you, and now you're gone. My worry fell on you, and I was strong, strong, strong. Your wretched little lies have all been cursed, 'cause with all the witches working, all the worst of a spell on you, and now you're mine. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. I'm lying. If you don't believe, you better get superstitious. Ask my cousin. Baby, I'm vicious. I put a spell on you. 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 I say I enter pi alpha maybe open die. I say I enter pi alpha maybe open die. Oh my Koriyama, and I say bye. Bye bye. I like that.
Nice, that was fun. I didn't know. I was guessing what notes to sing, and it
It was perfect.
worked out.
It was perfect. I like when it's just perfect. When it doesn't go
Hi,
in all
Y.
directions.
Welcome to the stream.
You are a slave now. Of course you are. Like, everybody in the stream right now is kind of a slave. I'm sorry, you don't have any other chances. This is awesome. Thank you, Why the Band. For those who don't know me, I'm Celine. I know we are on Andy the Frenchie stream right now, but she's not there for the moment. She's somewhere in Montreal. So we are taking over the stream as
We're doing a much better job of it. Let's be real.
we are. Andy is just so chaotic and just hasn't even gone to one song in the past hour. The last stream I've seen.
We've already
her.
played 2 songs.
Yeah, we already did that. So this is Mermaid Unicorn, aka the
Jessica.
They all also have their own channel. You can follow them by clicking on the little
Twitch.tv/mermaidunicorn.
Yeah, and normally there's even a dynamic follow button just there, so you can directly click on them.
Wait, someone sent us another treat?
Hmm.
I got 3 text messages.
Did they? Well, if
How?
all work, I don't know. They
Taco
have their
salad. Ooh.
Well, that's going to be interesting. Thank you.
Taco, pizza, and cake. It's really good cake too. It's
Yeah.
my favorite cake.
Well, I do like cake.
Mm-hmm.
So we follow. You do have to follow. A lot of treats.
It's not enough treats.
There's not enough foods.
Tis
in
the
this world.
season for trick or treat.
Yeah.
Okay.
You love mess, okay? And
Need
Dina
more
French, she
treats.
loves mess, not me. I like when
Taco
it's clean.
salad is the gothiest of Mexican foods. What do you mean?
One could argue, is there blood in it? Is there something in the
I mean,
the
there's
taco
salsa.
salad?
It's just tomato blood.
Yes, it's one kind of
In a
blood. Maybe
way.
that's why. Yeah, more treats. Always more treats. All right. Well, what do we have else in there?
Death is good.
Death is really good. Oh, have you seen that fantastic movie, guys? It's not very PG, so I'm going to
zombie
tell-
adult dancers.
It's yes. We'll translate it to zombie adult dancers. It is a fantastic movie. Fantastic movie. It's just it has everything. It has breasts. It has dancing. It has zombies. It has philosophy.
Philosophy.
They go into
Yes.
philosophical words. Yes, and it's a really
Humor.
really good. It has humor. Stop spoiling. Wait, what? I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just saying it
I
has.
haven't seen it
everything.
yet. Well,
You have
they
to see it.
didn't see it until this week, and I kind of had to force them to watch it. 'Cause
It is. It is.
the
an
first
old
half is
movie.
awful. It's called Zombie.
Strippers. I'll
Yeah.
say it. I don't care. But yeah, Joe, go watch that movie. It just has everything.
Yeah. People
Um,
getting it alert.
So the spoiler alert: the
Just
title of the movie is pretty much what the movie is about.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of zombies and a lot of
Strippers.
Stripping,
So
yeah.
yeah, so it's basically only that.
all you can ask for in a Halloween
Yeah.
movie. Just don't watch it with your family.
Yeah.
It's
We saw
not-
Dune last week. It's definitely better than Dune. Like it's probably the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
The CGI is god tier.
Yeah, it's super super good. So yeah. Zombie Strippers is about zombies who come around to remove wallpaper from the
they
wall.
strip the paint off of your
Stripping
body
paint.
with their breath.
Yes, and painting stripes also on zebras. So same thing for lesbian vampires.
They're stripers.
Zombie
stripers.
Zombie stripers. It just misses one
Aw.
P at one point.
You keep stealing my mouse. Oh right, because you're left-handed.
I am. This
Freak.
is yes. Well, I have to make do with Andy's. We all share the same quirks, so I have to share that with Andy.
That's fair.
I wanted to go see if we had a song in there, probably.
In the queue, yeah, we had lots of songs.
That's a song.
Somebody complimented us and said it was le plus beau duo or something like that. in
Really?
French. If you
Really?
scroll up.
Why
En français, c'est IL. I-E-L. IL.
Yeah.
C'est un mélange de L et il.
If you want to
Mais
address
ça
and use the
dérange
right
rien
pronoun.
pour aujourd'hui parce que je ressemble à une femme comme ça. Je porte le make-up. It's okay to use she.
It's
It's fine.
so fun to have the power to decide if you
Yeah.
want to impersonate a
Well,
woman
that's
or a
it because
male.
for me, I see dressing feminine. Like I'm wearing a full wig. I've got all this makeup on. For me, this is almost drag. So you know,
Oh,
if
of course, backfire again. See you in a few. I'm still there though. You can see me a little bit.
I was gonna say, even if you're a man, you know,
Yeah.
and you put on makeup, you put on a wig, you tuck, you wear boobies. You're a drag queen. People
Yeah.
call you she. They're not
Yeah.
gonna call you he if you're dressed in drag because you're
Yeah.
impersonating this. You know, you're embodying a woman. So. For me, especially when I put this much effort into it, sweetie, you can call me she. That is okay with me.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, it's just super empowering to be in control of what you decide you look like.
Mhm.
And the same thing when Andy and Stefan shows up, people call him he because Stefan is a guy. So.
Exactly. Ben, je connais pas trop les équivalents. Mais sans ça, ça réfère à, it refers to the object. So, you know, piano is a gender and the microphone is a gender. It doesn't have to do with the person. What that
Where it
belongs
gets
to.
tricky is with the adjectives.
Yeah, like chanteur, chanteuse.
Yes. And
You just put chanteur bracket euse.
yeah, chanteuse.
Chanteuse.
Chartreuse.
Ben,
Just call it a chartreuse.
chartreuse.
But yeah, that's why
Champagne.
in English it's easier because most
Yeah, we
adjectives.
don't
most-
assume our genders of the tables or the chairs or the, I don't
Yeah.
know, coffee mug doesn't have a gender.
So what we're talking about right now is that a mermaid unicorn is actually non-binary.
Yes.
So
The
some people
person
in the
under
chat-
all of this crazy
Exactly.
makeup and wig.
So
My natural
in
hair is
my-
actually rainbow. Don't tell anybody, but it's actually like rainbow. You
Ooh.
can't see it right now.
Yeah, my hair stays dark brown. I've always liked that color. I hate it when I come into Indy's stream and have to go into her body with her hair, and it's always a little bit messy, and she doesn't. I don't know that hair is the only one I like. But yeah.
We definitely have to do the Black Parade today. Do you know that one?
Oh no!
But you know the song, right?
I want to.
When I was a young boy, my father.
No, let's do it.
MCO.
I don't know it. Then don't come into my stream. It's not my fault if the people like me more than I like you, Andy. Get out. Get out. You're supposed to be in vacation. Just get out. So yeah, we should do that.
Imposter.
We should do that.
mean,
oh yeah, I don't
I'm
know
a girl who
everything.
hasn't seen Hocus Pocus, so
Yes. Okay. So, it's
sue
one
me.
for you, one for me.
yes, we'll take turns. Okay.
Alright, let's see what's that about.
Okay. I'm gonna need to steal my mouse back from you,
How
lefty.
could you not know it? I don't have to know anything. Okay, pencils.
How am I gonna do this
Are you
without
not
blocking
supposed
my
to-
face? We're just gonna block my face. It's fine. This is fine. Everything is fine.
It's fine. It's
Uh,
don't do
okay.
that one. Yeah. Listen, hello. Oh, there is a filoutage. Maybe one of the mods could explain what I am because, well, in a command or something. Because basically, normally on in these chats there is commands to explain who I am and my grave
Should've put
character.
there.
But yeah, Andy, go change your car tires for weather. Yeah, she should do that. Just stop complaining and go. I can't relax with you. She's just even more annoying when she's not on stream.
This
Explain
mic might
yourself.
steal the focus.
Yeah, Andy, just explain who I am. Thank you, by the way, for the follows. We have new followers. Hello, guys. Thank you.
When I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. He said, son, when you grow up, would you be the savior of the broken, the beaten, and the damned? He said, will you defeat them, your demons, and all the non-believers, the plans that they have made? Because one day I'll leave you a phantom to lead you in the summer to join the Black Parade. that was some My Chemical Romance. I'm gonna have to like make you listen to that whole album because it's emo icon. Like,
Yeah. I remember the Carry On. I've
Yeah.
heard that. I've heard that.
so the whole album is almost it's like an emo musical basically.
Yes, it does sound
Yeah.
like a musical. Maybe the only musical I would
they get
be
the food?
willing to. I did. We have one.
That's got to be the cake. That's
see.
the cake.
It probably is the cake.
Yes.
So let's
Cake for breakfast.
we always need more cake anyway. Let's see.
It's
Oh,
one of the
there's
best albums ever
A
made.
lot of cake.
Oh yeah, there should be 2 or 3. There's 2. So this one should be. Oh, maybe they gave us a different one.
Is it the cake choice of the?
Usually I think it give me a red velvet and then one was. Oh no, that's the carrot cheesecake. This might be key lime pie actually. But they might have substituted. They probably didn't have it. This is my favorite cake in the whole world.
Oh,
My favorite. I don't know
great.
if you like cheesecake.
I love cheesecake.
Did they give us forks?
Don't know.
They didn't give us forks.
Yes, of course. No, we don't. They didn't. We get the forks.
Okay.
Well, thank you for these. Key
Thank
lime,
you.
that-
I'm pretty
that's
sure it was
good.
Believer.
Yes, I think it was Believer. Lots of the
Okay.
time when it's for Andy, well, Believer provides for the foods because she can't feed herself. Your favorite dessert place is in Ottawa? Ooh, which place? Maybe.
This is from Elgin Street Diner. It's not the best, but it's pretty great. But Oh So Good is so good. They're literally so good.
That's what she said.
That's not what this is from though. It's from Elgin Street Diner because they deliver 24/7. And Oh So Good is like $10 for a single piece of cake. Like
Whoa.
sometimes $13.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it better be good cake.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I might go by there before Andy comes back. Let's see.
Mm.
That's a great
Their
way to eat
chocolate
cake
cake is
as
so
always.
good.
Yes, okay, well, I'll try.
I guess we should save this for after we eat
We
all
do.
the other foods.
we do need to save that.
Okay. I can switch.
That was actually very good. The
Thank
song
you.
you just played.
Thank you.
My voice, Danica. Alright. Gigantic pieces, so it yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Oh yeah, dude. The cake that there was this one time. It was my time of the month, and I needed chocolate cake. Otherwise, I would not be able to live through another day. And
Oh yeah?
other Andy, went and got me a piece of chocolate cake that was so big it took me 3 days to eat it. It was like this tall and like this thick, and we both split it, and it took like multiple days to finish.
Wow.
It. That's crazy.
Oh, Jojo Vel gifted us so to did. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for gifting that to Dudu. Bienvenue, Dudu.
Thank
I'm
you.
pretty sure Dudu likes the goth thing
Probably.
much more than the
Well,
regular
who-
thing.
Who would not like the goth
Yeah.
thing better than the regular thing? I just look at that face. It's way better than Andy's face. Just be honest with yourselves, guys. And also, I don't friend zone like Friendy does. Andy always friend
Frandy?
zones. Yeah.
Frandy?
They sometimes call her Andy the Friendy, or Friendy the
I see, I
Frenchie.
see.
You see, because she's always friend zoning everyone. I would not be as cruel as that. I give you your fantasies, guys. Andy the Friendy, yeah. Just
Alright,
like your general demeanor more than I know pencils, of course. All
Where
right.
did you? Oh, here you go. Can you pass my phone?
Yes, of course.
Just in case
There
I get
you go.
another call, I will be able to take it this time.
Okay, perfect.
I was like, I can't interrupt. We're almost there.
Oh, it's a teamwork. We're good. We have.
Oh, another one's. Wait, what? Oh no. Sorry, never mind.
It's the same.
That was the text we
Savage.
just got.
Well, it's just common sense at that point. Is it a makeup or a tattoo? Well, it's my own way of arranging my face, so it's not a tattoo. It's just how
It's
I
a
am.
spell.
Yeah, it's just how I am.
The more
should we
magic
just
you do,
equally-
the more lines you have.
You do?
What? I said the more magic you do, the more lines you have.
Well, in my case, the more precise my line can be, the more magic I do. So it's not I have. It's not like a. So some warriors will have marks the more they kill, like it's- But I'm not like that. It's just more precise and more like the more. And also in Halloween time, it's always a little bit more powerful.
I'm living for this. Like I'm like I need to do this face more often.
It is. It
Like
is.
it's
very
like
good.
it's really like the eyes,
Yes, and the highlights in
the
there.
highlight,
Yeah.
and the extra dark contour, like the cheeks.
It does look very good. I can't really change my face, unfortunately, because I'm just that face. But that makeup is pretty. It is.
I look
stunning.
like Cher.
Cher.
Snap out
What
of
did you
it.
say?
I don't look like
Sacrifice?
Cher.
I would not sacrifice anybody. I
Like a
will
young
actually.
Cher.
That's.
I don't see it.
I don't see it. Neither.
I don't see it.
I don't see. Maybe it's the hair, maybe because Cher has dark hair. But the Cher impression gives it.
Do you believe in love and love? I can live something inside myself. I really don't think you're strong enough now.
Yeah, I heard it
Do
there.
you believe in life after love?
Yeah, probably they can have their own autotune in voice. It's just.
I
in there.
know something.
Do you believe in love?
Do you believe? Okay, that's enough.
That's perfect. So, as a reminder, if we get to the end of the cat piano sacrifice bar, we will sacrifice a cat piano.
And we
because
have
I know
another goal too.
we have another goal
A lot of
after
big
that.
plans.
I really don't want us to
No,
fill the other
don't.
goal. It's just in case it happens and something goes.
You never know, you know.
You never know. But if we get to
Shakira.
the end of that, we are sacrificing. Well, you've seen these terrible cat pianos.
Awful toys, makes too much noise.
So
very bright
this-
colored.
This one will
Very
get
much
sacrificed. So basically, what we have is a little ritual that I will paint my heart because I want to curse it. So I have the Celine's heart, which is a whole thing, and after we will blind it with paint. So it has to be blinded, so it cannot give its mighty roar again. And we have a whole thing to steal its soul. Like it's just if you want it to be alone. This is Andy's cat piano, by the way. So she'll go back with the cursed cat piano.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to
Yeah.
break my cat piano
Yes.
because it's on lease right now.
When you make a
So-
Ouija board out of it, I am not. It's too complicated. But we will curse it. So
Bonjour.
Andy's cannot use it properly when she comes back. She'll have to find a way to make it right again. It's
Oh,
not easy.
Dudu, are we hosting? Can you host Veld or Dudu?
Oh, true.
Make sure
true.
that we're hosting. I'm pretty sure we are, but
We're not going
Veld,
to break
Veld
it.
is always on top of that. Veld's got it.
Thank you, Giorgio.
Original has a first beside his name here.
They do.
That checks out.
Yes,
He's
been around.
I don't
for
know
a
why
while.
he doesn't have a first one for me. He's been around since like the first month
He does.
for me
Oh.
too, but he doesn't have the first thing. I don't know.
Yeah, he
I don't
did.
have any first badges in him.
I think you can choose which badge you have. So he has the mod badge, I think. in
Probably
yours,
the
so he
mod
doesn't have-
and the
Yes. So you have to choose which one. All right. Well,
evil
that's-
daycare for adults. Welcome.
Yes, we are. We are an evil daycare for adults. All right.
Thanks for the host, Phil.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I'm a believer.
Let's try this. Yeah. When he came to Andy's stream for the first time, Andy was like less than. She had maybe 10 viewers or
That's
15
fair.
viewers. It was very.
I don't know
very
how I
small.
had that many subs.
Yeah.
It's all quite a blur to me.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's see what we have in the song list that we could play. Do you know Nothing Else Matter?
Nothing else matters. Absolutely, yeah.
We could do that. It's
Yeah.
very easy, and you could even play the guitar on it.
Yeah, I could try it.
Yeah, let's do that. So this is for Now I'm a Believer. I'm a believer, yeah, 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 yeah. Does Andy remember who her first song? You would have to ask her. I have no idea, and I don't.
I
care.
remember who my first big donor was. It was someone special.
Oh.
They donated $80 and I cried.
Aw,
The name was literally someone special.
that is sweet.
Yeah, and my first big raid was Neebs Gaming.
Neebs Gaming.
Yeah.
I don't know them.
Yeah. They're a gamer. They do random stuff on their stream.
I think it's.
But that was when Nebula needed surgery on her paw because she had like a broken like one of
Oh,
her
yeah,
paw pads.
They have a cat, a black
do
cat.
have a black
It's
cat.
adorable. I want to show it on
Yeah.
the stream at some point. I love cats,
Mhm.
and it's a black cat. So let's be honest, it's just fantastic. It's just so sweet. Nothing Else Matters. One of my favorite places to play on the guitar. Well, let's do it. Let's do it.
I don't know the
Nothing Else-
guitar part, but
Oh, just
I can do my best.
Yeah, it's not very difficult.
Jonathan Ong probably has a spare one. Did you see the cat piano cosplay that I did though? Were you there for that, Joe?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, it just says E minor.
Yes, we could get the
I will leave you in charge of that.
Yes, I'll do it. Let's go with the research here. Nothing else matters. Oh, it's not the same thing. Chords. It's pretty easy. There it is.
Okay.
You said auto scroll. That's not bad.
I'll just follow you.
No close, no matter how far. Won't be much more from the heart.
Wait, who did that? I compel you. 6th and 9th and 89. What are you trying to do, Andy the Frenchie? What are you trying to do?
Andy the Frenchie donated.
Yeah, she donated 6 and 89. I have no idea why she did that.
Huh.
I don't know. Gracefully hilarious. Thank you for
That's
that.
an interesting alert.
Yes, that's.
Thank you, Gracefully.
So Andy's has different quotes. Of course. That's flies. So Andy has all these stupid words. I hate the chaos. It's borderline chaotic, guys. You better stop it now if you don't want to call Andy to the stream again. But these 300 bits alert, it will pop with a random quote from Andy's stream. And they're
that's cute.
mostly humiliating for her. So
Oh.
it's not that bad.
Speaking of alerts, I should probably turn my phone on.
Oh yes, just in case the food calls. The flies are on the wrong side of the screen. They're just everywhere at that point. Okay, who got timed out? Oh, Tedak that timed out. And he thinks she does think she's so funny and so authentic and so positive. She's just like, it's, gagging. Bye, Teda. Yeah, have a great day. Wearing contacts today. I don't need contacts. Andy does. I don't. I have perfect eyes. It's just how
They're
how
so
perfect.
beautiful and dark and rich. They're like
I know.
like
Andy's
pools of
eyes are.
flames. Like if you took coagulated blood and set it on fire.
You know how to speak to ladies. I do like that. I try to find a song we will play together. Can you play Rehab? Ooh. Do you play Rehab on your stream? We
Like
could
Amy
do
Winehouse? All the time.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you know the verses? at all, or do you want to just do the chorus together?
I'll chime in. I'll chime in. But I think I can do the verses.
Sorry.
Oh, what was that?
I just texted my friend who does the karaoke tonight, and I'm just asking him like what time.
Oh,
He's like, "It's fine, you're good. Just send me the slips. You'll get up there."
Okay, just tell them that will.
Oh, and it's also the courier. It's
Oh.
like your food's about to arrive.
Oh, so many foods about to arrive.
I'm gonna
Oh.
text the other Andy and be like, "Hey, can you get the door?"
Oh, that's a good idea. All right,
Oops,
so
that's
let's
you.
go to
Andy with two N's.
Yes.
So confusing.
Well, I don't know if Andy will be back, like my Andy will be back in time for your karaoke night, but I can take her place. I'm pretty much sure I'm a better singer than she is at karaoke. Friday.
Whenever I'm about to
passage.
do something,
Oh,
I think,
neither.
would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing.
Yes, that's her.
Yes, the office alert.
Yeah, that's her tier 2 alert when somebody sub to tier 2 because they're not stupid.
I love
tier
it.
2 is.
I love it.
Yeah. So thank you, Nilesh, for
My
the tier
Andy.
2.
Well, they're both my Andys.
Yes.
I like to think.
Yes, I'm giving her to you. You can have her. Okay. Try to make me go to rehab. I said
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
no,
we'll do that.
no. Yeah, we can do it.
They try to make me go to rehab, but I said no, no, no. See, yes, I've been glad where I come back. You know, no, no. 'Cause I ain't got the time. And my daddy thinks I'm fine. Just try to make me go to rehab, but I won't go. There goes E minor. I'd rather be at home with me. A minor.
Yeah,
We got another foods.
So much food.
Skip man aside. Okay, I gotta go get him. Andy's not being responsive.
No, it's okay. He's like the other Indy.
Oh my
Never
gosh, we gotta
responds.
answer. I gotta answer the door like this. What did he react? How did he react when he saw you?
Great Scott! Great Scott! Great Scott! I know, this is heavy.
I remember you as Excel. You're a fine piece. Hi, how are you doing? I'm glad you're here. And again, some foods. In the meantime, I could play something for you guys. What about what do we have in the song list that the Thika cannot play? Cover You. Okay, if I play I'll Cover You, I am not going to play a right version of the song. Selene is sabotaging my text to you. Wait, what? They're not. They're not. By the way, thank you, SXL, for the tier 3. Of course, yes, that's what I do normally. No. At least you can see the piano sacrifice yet, still. Love that the people keep getting timed out in my chat, and most of the people getting timed out are actually the mods. That's the thing about.
From the finger snapping?
Yes, no, the just mod abuse and such. They love being there. Yeah, it's too bad. Too bad. Thank you, Benoit Saint-R, for the 6 and 66 for the hex. To do the cat piano, we're going to probably strip the cat piano from its original cat piano meow, paint it a little black so it has the Celine's mark on it, and just steal its soul properly. It's a whole ritual we're going to do. We're not going to destroy it physically because it's a little bit crude, and we are not crude. So, no, that's what we're going to do. For you twice today already. Yes, I know the snap is a little bit rude. Some place. I'm not even going to assess that. I could sing something. We have I'll Cover You, which Andy the Frenchie asked because she's just wants to troll us, so I'll transform that one probably.
I've actually never seen Rent.
You've never seen Rent? That's
I did the Seasons of Love though. I had to play the piano for my high school vocal class, and we did the 525,000.
Yes, that's
We
the
did that
most
one.
known of that one.
But I've never actually seen it. Apparently, it's so sad.
It is
And I'm
very
like,
sad.
I don't like sad things.
Well, I do, so that's why I enjoy Rent. It's very sad. Yes, so basically what you're seeing for 6 and 66 people, maybe not everybody know about it, you can make me appear on stream and just hex the stream. There's other things you can make appear on the stream, like exclamation point alert if you want to see everything. Oh, no, come on!
My pizza!
Ooh, pizza!
Go!
Yes.
You can't have it, dog.
Ha!
Make
Pizza!
sure you get your hands wet
Hey, guys.
before you touch the $7,000 keyboard.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch the piano before we eat the whole entire pizza. So, hi guys! How's it going? How's it going? We have, I'll Cover You. Requested by me.
I'm starting to think these curses are making things really happen because there's a bug
Yeah, maybe.
flying around.
Celine is real good at hexing and she's just a mess. Celine just wrecks things. That's what she does on my stream.
Andy?
Yeah. They made Shirley appear on the stream, so sorry.
No.
You'll get me for a
No worries.
few minutes.
Welcome back.
Yeah. And I love that Celine won't get to eat the pizza. That I am eating the pizza. I love
What is
that.
it? 889? Oh, that's the first Charlie. Is Charlie a dog?
Charlie is the dog that goes in the. Actually, the dog that Mermaid met back at Andy's house.
Yeah,
So-
the little mutt.
Yes, the little
little-
Chihuahua.
Yeah, the little rat mutt. The furry rat.
I love him.
It's a very cute rat.
He's a dog. But Celine really hates dogs, so it drives her away when she sees a dog on the stream.
Wait, there's crayons and pencils in here?
Mm-hmm.
Now we just need a ruler and a sharpener.
Well, I know that a
We
lot
got
of
the full
people
kit.
want to take crayons and pencils as they make accounts specifically to mess with pencils. There's an Eraser 45. There is a Crayon 45. Yeah, there's a bunch
Oh
of
my
them.
god.
It's really funny. He has a reputation even as a mud. Ruler and sharpener. Yeah. Okay. I'll put that there in the meantime. So I can actually sing a
Degrease
song for
yourself.
real. So I will sing Cover You because I requested it. And Celine doesn't have the power to change this song. I'll play it. Alright.
And I will eat and stare into the camera.
Eat, stare into the camera, and I'll sing the song.
Stare into it.
Maybe Celine. I am not Celine. By the way, I'm back as Andy. It's just Celine's body. But people know how to drive her away. Café Sparrow, thank you for the 889. Believer for the 666. Benoit for the
Mod.
66. Yeah, look at the mods.
Are you talking about Cheeky?
Oh, Cheeky?
Oh, Cheeky's not a mod here. He's just
No, he's not. He's just he has his own command to make himself time out.
Why is he not a mod?
I don't know. Oh, he was at some point for a special occasion, but I unmodded him afterward because it was too complicated to
Yeah.
keep him as a mod. He's too
Too
much.
expensive.
It's too expensive.
Too expensive.
He asks like
Expensive
double the
tastes.
mod dollars that everybody else asks all the
No.
time. So it's a little bit. It was too much for
Oh,
me.
pencil streams?
Yes, he does. And he gives all his proceedings to charity too. So it's just the only reason why I watch his stream, just because of that.
Are you rubbing the pizza grease onto your hair?
There was a little bit of grease in the hair. I'm very good at either. I'm very. Celine's going to be super happy that I messed with her hair. Right.
Best Halloween stream ever. Just you weigh it.
Yeah, that's why her hair always gets all dirty. It's
Honestly-
just when I'm here.
The last stream that we did with the cat piano and the mermaid makeup,
Yes,
I was also top tier.
it was. It's
I
top
felt
tier
like-
content.
Like, this isn't even my final form. Like, I have another Halloween costume prepared, right?
What?
The lo-fi girl.
Yes, true,
Yeah.
true.
So that's gonna be, I have to perform at a party this Saturday. So that's gonna be my costume then. And I'm gonna try and stream on actual Halloween in my costume. But
So many. I really like Halloween. It's always fun to just.
yeah.
Put
I
on
just
all
have
these
so many
costumes.
gigs this week. It's gonna be crazy.
Well, I'm excited for that for you. Okay, this is one of my real hair. Why am I? Is my hair actually? I think I'm trying. My body is trying to take over Celine's body, so that's why I'm growing red hair underneath. All right. That's not even the right one. Live in my house, I'll be in my house, I'll be your shelter. Just pay me back. Yes, I got it. Okay, so this is for me. While I'm in Indy and in Celine's body as Andy, she'll hate this, and I'm living for it. Okay, let's do it so we don't actually see the iPad or not too much. Whoop. There. Live in my house, I'll be your shelter. Just give me back with 1,000 kisses. Be my lover, and I'll cover you. Open your door, I'll be your tenant. Don't got much baggage to lay at your feet, but sweet kisses I've got to spare. I'll be there and I'll cover you. I think they meant it when they say you can't buy love. No, I know you can rent it. At least you are my love. On life, all my life. Just slip me on, I'll be your blanket. Wherever, whatever, I'll be your coat. You'll be my king and I'll be your castle. Or you'll be my queen and I'll be your moat. I think they meant it when I say you can't buy love. Now I know you can rent it. At least you are
find my love alive all my life. I long to discover something as true as it seems. With 1,000 sweet kisses, I'll cover you. With 1,000 sweet kisses, I'll cover you. With 1,000 sweet kisses when you're worn and tired. When your heart has expired, oh lover, I'll cover you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh lover, I'll cover you.
I was kissing my pizza.
That's one of the happy songs. There's a few happy songs in Rent. It's actually super sweet. It's it's one guy who has AIDS and he finds a drag queen or trans. It's not very sad if they're just drag queen or trans, and they just have this moment, just fall in love instantly, and they just I'll be there for you in that moment. And that song, it wasn't the happiest song in the whole musical. It turns into the saddest song in the whole musical. It's the same one, but he sings it as a gospel at some point. Yeah, live in my house, I'll be your shelter. Just pay me back with 1,000 kisses.
I need to watch this.
It's really good.
I'm not a Halloween movie, so I'm not allowed right now. I can only watch Halloween movies.
Yeah. But yeah, it's super fun. Hello, Code. Hello, guys in the chat. I know that Celine normally ignores you guys in the chat, so I won't. I will tell you hi. I freaking tear each time at that point. It's such a beautiful written song that it can be a super happy and a super sad song at the same time. I love it. I feel like we snuck into a cool kid slumber party and no one noticed, so we haven't been kicked out yet.
You're all welcome to the slumber party, alright?
It's okay. Celine doesn't really give a care about the people who are in there. She just wants your money.
Bring your own nail polish, okay? Don't share my black nail polish.
Ooh, yeah, true. She didn't put nail polish. That's quite surprising, actually. She really likes it. How you guys doing in the chat? How's it going in there? The pizza list, it's really good. I'll take a note. Oh,
That's
Pua!
amazing.
Thank you for giving a sub to
French mermaid.
French mermaid.
Who?
Ooh, that's interesting. Hector, hi.
I'm
It's
happy you
good.
played a song because I could just imagine eating on stream.
Imagine.
I never get to because I'll get food and then I'm like, no, I have to keep playing music, and then my food will get cold. Not you.
Yeah, I always do it.
No, it's part of the entertainment.
There's no shame. I just eat it all. Oh no, already.
Oven fried pizza.
Oh,
Here you go. Want a bite?
she was eating pizza.
Here you go. Open wide. Here comes the airplane. Choo-choo. Here you go. Nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. Nom. Eat it. Huh. Good. Oh.
Okay, so that's a thing. This pizza is kind of good. Where did it come from?
Believer. Believer bought us like a bunch of food.
Thanks. And by the way, pencils, thank you for bringing me back.
I think it was all Believer. Let me check though.
And she's still wearing her stupid pajamas back in her house, trying to crash into the stream.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, she's very annoying. And she was listening
But
to
you
it.
guys are related somehow.
Well,
So.
we're cousins. We do have to hang out each Christmas. It's very annoying. The only one I can stand in her cousins actually is Cynthia. She's a special kind of person, but I don't know. We just get along somehow.
Is that the one that made me do sit-ups?
No, that's Chantal. Chantal is scary. Chantal is just scary. I just
She doesn't even use magic,
Yeah.
but I don't know how. Each time she appears, I don't want
Cardio
to
is a
piss her.
very scary thing that
Yes.
I never want to do ever.
When
I like
when
keeping
she
my
appears,
gaunt, skinny, lean figure by just not eating ever really, except for this pizza. This is an exception. But working out, gross. Imagine having muscles. Ugh.
yeah, I hate working out too, but believe me, when Chantal appears, you have just no choice. She's so intimidating. She has this presence. I don't know what it is.
I could probably take her. I think.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Baddie.
No, maybe you could. I don't even want to try. But yeah.
Chantal should coach Merms for workout or yoga.
Oh mon dieu. I hope it doesn't happen.
Oh my god, is that another food?
How many foods? Oh yes, there's taco food too.
Yeah, there's a taco. I'm not gonna be hungry for tacos. I ate so much pizza.
So many foods. All right. Okay, so let's play some music maybe. What did we have in there? I'll cover you. Oh, did she play it? Good. I don't have to. Ah, perfect. All right. So we have Toxic from Britney
You
Spears.
gotta teach me how to hack the system and order 3 foods, because that's ridiculous.
Oh, they can do it by only ordering them at the same time.
But it was all one person, wasn't it?
Yes, they open it on different browsers and they order it on different browsers at the same time. I think that's how they do it. They're very, very good. We need music when you again see goth eating pizza. It's a whole kind of world in here. Maybe people like seeing goth girls eating pizza.
No, it was Apocalypse Squirrel that sent the salad.
Apocalypse Squirrel, well, thank you for the salad. You know what? We'll play their song. We'll play her song. She asked for Toxic from Britney Spears, and there's a. Actually, do you know the song?
Of course.
We could do a mellow version, like dark version of that. It could be very useful and very easy. I have the lyrics there.
I'm gonna be so full by the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna be able to get out of this.
It's okay. Do you need to get out of this? At some point, but not before at least the end of the night.
Oh, do you want to switch chairs too? Or?
Yes, let's do it. Let's do a kind of.
I'm sure there's someone who likes to eat goth girls eat pizza. Yeah, there's probably an OnlyFans for that somewhere.
Although at some point these kind of things are so niche that in order to really make money out of it, it's like you really have to fall into that specific category, and everybody knows you're the reference into goth girls eating pizza. It's very, very specific. So I kind of want to go dark with that one, like the baby, can you see?
I'm calling.
Yeah. I would watch you two every day. Well, thank you. Why? Be careful with the compliments, though. I don't particularly like when people are
like
just.
compliments.
Well, it's just most of the time it's fake. People are fake, fakers, posers, and I don't like compliments all that much neither. Just follow. Well, thank you, OTF Monk. Be sure that I'm apologizing in advance because today is a very special day. Normally this setup is not the setup. It's we're currently in Ottawa for Mermaid Unicorns setup. You see it just there. So and Andy's not even here. So unfortunately, we have.
Was that a real knock?
I think so.
Okay. You got the food? Thank you.
So many foods. But yeah, basically, the next time you see an Andy stream, it's not even going to be us. It's going to be Andy, and you're gonna be disappointed. Just let's face it. But in the meantime,
I'm Mermaid Unicorn. Hi.
they're Mermaid Unicorn, and they have their own channel just here if you want to follow them.
Mermaid Unicorn. You should follow me.
And they can even sing longer than that. That's just the beginning. Yeah, like that. So many snaps, everybody. Des écritures, maybe they're talking about that here. And
I
that
thought
here.
they were talking about your eye makeup. maybe?
Oh, that's runes, not écriture.
Oh, I'm out of tune.
Yeah, that's cool. That's just vibing. I'm sitting right here completely still and you'll miss me. Your aim is terrible. Oh, Teda wants to be snapped again. I'm not doing it. It's my power taking over and doing it. I'm not aiming at you. I'm aiming at whoever. I swear I hear Jolene there. Oh, but Jolene could fit in there too. Junu, oh, so many snapping. Be careful if
How do
you
they
get.
get all the points.
I don't. They just don't spend it normally. They just. There is some one thing on Andy's stream, which is if you get to 900,099,199, there's a Thanos snap. So basically, it will time out half of the chat for a random amount of numbers. Yes. So if somebody
For how many
gets,
minutes? Or points?
it's points 999,999. So
Okay,
just shy of 1
999.
million
Yeah,
points. It will time out half the chat. So some people are keeping their money for that, but then decide to use it to snap somebody in the chat randomly. So that's what's happening right now. No, they're not free. They're still fairly expensive, but people just decided to go with them. Baby, can't you see I'm calling? A guy like you should wear a warning. It's dangerous. I'm falling. Yeah. There's no escape. I can't wait. I need a hand. Baby, give me air. It's dangerous.
is good. To be honest, everything is better than when Andy sings
I
it,
do
but
that
was
one
very
kind
good.
of like a.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that works too.
That's how I do like a little kind of like a almost not bluegrass but almost.
Yes, I hear it. I hear it.
I'm on a ride. You're toxic. I'm slipping under it. I'm addicted to you. Don't you know that you're toxic?
That's cool.
It's kind of
Specs
swung.
to welcome Jen
Seinfeld
Caput.
Squirrel.
That's
The écureuil.
well, we
Thank
got
you
that
for the
version
food.
too well added. But no. It's one song per person. It's way too generous to have 2 songs per person. have other
Yeah.
ones.
Technically, it's half a song because we're both people that make
Yes.
one song. So if you divide it, then it's.
But there's another thing I am like Andy with. It's the only kind of thing I like Death Note the musical, and I am also a sellout. So I'm not doing things for free normally. No black polish is the clue. We don't. You don't have to put us in boxes. It's not because we don't have black nail polish that we are not who we are. Hmm? Thank you, Specs2. Thank you very much. So thank for the new followers. It's super appreciated.
Welcome.
Pua gifted a sub to French Mermaid. I don't know if I said it, but thanks for that. Out of Monk, Wi-Fi, Jen Skipunk, and Specs2. Thank you for the follows, guys. Need I remind to tell you that if today we get at the end of this very, very generous bar, we will sacrifice a cat piano because Andy's cat piano is on the line. And also every tips and bits will be split between the 2 of us. Andy will get none of it. It's going to be me, Celine, and Detica / Mermaid Unicorn. You can get them.
That's me.
So if you want to encourage the stream or encourage the
gothiness of it all.
the gothiness and just the
The
amazingness.
darkness, baby.
Yes, we will get a wheel. I am not going to give you a wheel, but I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell that to you. I will promise in Andy's name. She cannot argue. She's not there. That she will do a wheel if you get to the end of that. So next stream, Andy will do a wheel just for you guys, and she'll have to do it because I promised it. So yeah. Send the cat piano to Brit as a consolation prize for the bag. No, of course not. The cat piano will
Send it in
stay in
pieces.
Andy's. It's just going to be cursed. Yeah, and sacrificed. So she'll have to find how to use a cat piano. Andy the Frenchie gave $10. Thank you very much. Welcome to Juan and all the indie Frenchie musical extravaganza. Hi, Itchy Pickles. Welcome. Let's see what we have in there. So we played Toxic. Oh, Crazy. Do you know that one?
Crazy's fun, yeah.
Okay, let's do
I do
that.
it in B minor usually, but
Perfect.
we do it in a different key.
Oh, let's do it in B minor. B minor. Yeah. There's yeah, play it and I'll just. Yeah.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions had an echo. There's so much space. Oh. And when you're out there without a care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. I just knew too much. wanna live like that. Oh, ever since I was little, ever since I was little, it looked like fun. And it's so coincidence that I've come. And I can die when I'm done. Oh, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. Probably. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe we're crazy. Probably.
Good.
Bienvenue, welcome. Thank you, work.
New work. Lots of first timers in the chat. Welcome, guys. Super much. Thanks for the bits. We do like to
Thank
be
you for the
praised.
bits. We do like praise.
Yeah, we do like praise. I did say I don't like compliments, but I do like the praise. I like to be wanted. I like to be praised, feared, all these kind of worshipping.
Praised
I'm
and
all-
feared at
Yes.
the same time.
Yeah, why can't
Like you
do
praise
both?
me out of fear. Like if you don't praise me,
Yeah.
you will die because
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
Bonsoir,
implications.
Mende Grakis. Bonsoir, bonsoir. I do speak French. Tu bonjour.
Oui,
Elle parle tout français. Oui. Which is also
Not as well.
international.
Not as well. It's my second language, so
You do speak
not as
fairly,
bon.
fairly well in French.
Yeah.
I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. Oh,
Yeah.
is that
Isn't
an
that
office?
a quote from The Office? Yeah.
It's an office reference.
That's Michael Scott.
I know that just because Andy knows it. We share sometimes because we share
Some memories.
the body. I have her memories stuck in my head as much as I don't like all the things she loves normally. Oh no, you.
Call me Eric Clapton, because I'll pluck your heartstrings.
These are Claudio and Claudia. These are do you know the compliments? These are the cousins compliments, and
Oh my
they
goodness.
yes they give little pickup lines. I'd say they like to trigger loving thoughts. I don't like them, to be honest, but it was not too chaotic. It's still okay. Thank you, Maestro, for the 10 and 11. By the way, very appreciated. It's going towards the sacrifice of the cat piano. Hello, Jim Cloven. Lots of new people in there. What could we play here?
I don't know any of those songs to be
Hey, wake
Oh,
up!
no.
It's time to exercise for Chantal!
have to.
And today we're gonna do something for your floppy butt!
Yes.
We're gonna do squat!
Alright, I'm
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Stop screaming at me!
9, and you stay!
Yeah. So Chantal has decided that she would, all of the cousins, she would take us and make us just healthier. So she organizes these get together, and we have to do exercise, and I really hate it. I'm very healthy, but I really hate it. Don't like doing that a lot. Just never.
Yeah, I like being on the brink of death.
Yeah, I'd prefer
Health is
that
for
too.
losers.
I'd prefer that too. Thank you for being there. We're approaching a hype train. This is a little bit dangerous because if it gets too chaotic, I am not staying here. So you guys better be careful about how you do the hype train. If you don't know Mermaid Unicorn, I know some people
Hi.
did the command.
That's me.
It's them, and they have
I'm me.
their own.
Flip.
I hate that.
Where did they come from?
This is Andy's things. I have nothing to do with that. This is only Andy's things. People can just try to trigger it. I'm getting a little bit itchy. Mermaid Unicorn has their own channel. You can follow them just there. They have the little follow button, so be sure.
Yes, welcome to my studio.
It is their studio. We're not in Andy's studio today. I am in Ottawa, and Andy just went for a stroke in Montreal. She can come back afterwards, but today it's only me and Deathika on the stream. Yes. Boris is on holidays. Well, Boris is not here today. He, of course, would not follow to Ottawa. It's a little bit far.
Quel serait votre nom si vous formez
Formez un band.
un duo
A duo, like a band name. What would be?
with us?
Yeah. What would? It's too easy to go with like the Goth Sisters. It's too the Twisted.
No. Twisted Sisters is already
But with the Twisted something else. I like Twisted. Twisted Minds. I'm not sure. I don't have to come up with names. What am I doing here? Okay, so I could play you Only Humans, which is a.
Oh no.
Oh no! Don't do this. I'm telling you. I'm getting out of here.
The Automod was like holding it from racism.
I can't. Yeah, it doesn't want. Russian dolls. They're sold for. It's a good thing that we're not dolls. We're as pretty as dolls, though.
I'm a doll.
Yeah, but we're not literal dolls. Have you been a literal doll at some point? Like in a hex that went badly or something like that?
No, but
Could.
I have had my fair share of voodoo dolls I've used.
Okay, but you haven't been a voodoo doll.
No. Well, that I know of. Come to think of it, I have had a lot of back pain lately, so it could be possible that someone's trying
Voodoo
to
you?
mess with me. Yeah.
Why would they?
That
You're
would
such
make
a lovely
sense.
creature.
You know, just jealousy, the usual.
Yes, that happens. It's Twisted Souls. It's a tongue twister at the same time. Twisted Souls. Yeah, I kind of like that. We do have souls, even if. Gracefully Lyris, thank you for the 300 bits. Butts and boobies, boobies and butts. That's very mature indie. Okay, I kind of want to sing Only Humans. I said that Death Note the musical is a thing in here, so it's waltz, and it's kind of, if you want to come in the chorus, it's not very difficult.
You can see.
Here. So have you seen Death Note?
The anime.
The anime?
Yes. I
Okay.
love the anime.
So basically, in the anime, Ryuk and Ram, in the musical, they at some point they watch over all Earth, and that's why I like this song, because they just watch out everybody and just say, okay, they're puny little humans. They don't know what's coming for them. So that's basically what the song is about at the beginning
Nice.
of the musical. So it goes like that. And what you can do with me in the chorus is actually the only human. So this is the. Yeah, it goes, they're only human, they don't see who they are is who they'll always be. Only humans after all. So it's always the
That's
only
a little
human.
bit tricky to just learn on the spot.
Just the only human part. I don't want you to. Yeah, just that. Just only humans. Na na na. And the second one, only humans after all. Or whatever you want.
Okay.
So these two is the place you can
Yeah.
probably
I will
have fun.
just.
You don't have to.
I will try.
You don't
I don't
have
wanna
to.
ruin
You
the
will
song.
not ruin it. There's no way you can ruin this song. It's just so beautiful at this moment. The key change, I never forget any key changes. So please, pencils, before I ban you myself. Look at how they crawl around upon the ground like little ants. Yes, but how they fascinate, confusing fate with what is merely chance. Isn't it a shame? Isn't it a laugh? Thinking there's some sing every day till the day they die. Never getting answer, let's still asking why. Going through the motion as if there will be a reward. Why we stay eternally born? They're only human, they don't see who they are is who they'll always be. Only human after all. So they push and they shove with this thing they call love till they fall. Isn't it a farce? Isn't it a waste? Struggling to face what can never be faced. Or maybe death can release something more than we share. I really don't know and don't care. They're only humans standing still, doomed to live pushing boulders uphill. Only human after all. So they give and they take, hoping someone will help break their fall. They will pray, curse, live, die, never knowing their truth is another man's lie. Eat, love, sleep, hate like a leaf blowing in the wind. Watch them all vacillate. They're only human, they can see all the years they can give you and me. Only humans after all. So they give and we take till this silly heartbreak. Looking down for love, I'm intrigued by the love, so let's go. Let's go.
I love it. I have to watch that one too now.
It is a very good
It's
song.
such a good piece.
It is a
Oh my
very
god, I
good
had
piece.
goosebumps. I still have goosebumps.
Yes, I sometimes have goosebumps when I play it because it's such a
Yeah.
good song. I really so the song. That's $200. Normally, and
Hi, Marky loves cats, but what?
yes, that's a lot.
200 from
S6L. S6L is the one I said he likes it. S6L is maybe the one person I'm talking about myself in the third person because at that point I don't want to say that I would date like somebody like Celine being me, but he has this kind of darkness to him. I cannot forget our time.
Wait,
don't
do
do
we
our
have to make
time.
art?
Yeah, so normally, Andy, when she gets $200, she has to make an emote on stream. Like what you've seen, our time, people can decide. So probably you can, I am not going to say the serious that I like him because he likes me so much. As he said, he's just like aloof. That's what I like. He just gives money, gets out of Dodge.
Joke, Hector.
What did you say? I changed my phone name to Titanic. It's sinking. Oh my god! What? What did you do? Oh no!
No.
Oh, it was a bad pun. Celine hates bad puns. When
Yeah.
she gets tricks into reading
There was
things.
a few bad puns today. There was
Oh,
quite a
oh
few.
no! I time. Wait, you gave $200. Okay, no, I can. Okay, I can do the arts at some point, but we can't do
I
it
have
today.
a pen and a tiny piece of paper. You can make a tiny art.
Yes, but normally I make the art on the iPad, and it's a whole thing. It's
And you turn it to emotes.
yes, and they can use it in the stream. So sometimes I think one of the emote is sometimes in there, but it's I send it to it's like a commission. But for some reason, people want to overpay sometimes for a little
Emotes.
very very ugly emotes too. Like normally it's just very
Understandably
ugly
so.
because it's made on stream in like 30 minutes. But S6L, is that you? Yeah, you donated the 200. Thank you very much first. And second, you can keep it for when
Another
Andy will be.
redemption.
Yeah, you can keep it for a later, like an NFT. Oh, she sang Only Human. Oh, I wanted to sing that one. I love it so much.
I'm just trying to learn it now. That's the only line.
Yeah,
It's
it's super
so
cool. Like
very chromatic.
yes. It's so cool that I don't know this. It's like a macabre waltz.
The T-Rex. Cheers, Celine and Merms. Well, I'll tell her when she comes back. But yeah, the pun threw her away.
How can we possibly do an improv together?
We could probably do an improv. Do you improv? I could play.
I do a lot of improv, but I'm very weird with improv, though. That's the thing.
Well, you could get weird, and I could try to have fun with the flute with it, or something like that. That was just a weak version of what Celine just did. What I can play it very good. Thank you very much, pencils. So just admit she would date, as he said. Oh no. Especially if I am the body and she takes over the body to date, as he said. I'm not okay with that. Celine, don't date anyone. Please let me live my life. We have. Have you heard I Expect You to Die? It's a song from a spoof. It's a video game of that name, and it's like a very James Bondy. It's funny. Falling Slowly is a great song.
I don't know that one.
Okay,
Our
what?
songs are so different.
It's okay. We can get. Okay. You did say you had to play some spooky songs for a gig you have.
Yeah,
this
but I
weekend.
haven't learned them yet. I haven't had time.
Thriller?
Do you know how to play it?
I know how to play it. So
I
we
know
could,
how to sing it. I don't know how to play it.
but you know how to sing it, so we could do that.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do it. Let's play Thriller. As he said, if you want a song, just peruse and we'll do it. But in the meantime,
I'm
you could
awake.
play Thriller.
I'm awake.
Yeah.
I just ate a lot of pizza. That's all.
Andy, that's not nice. Celine's her own person, so she should be allowed to date who she. Yeah, but we share thoughts. We share thoughts, guys. Our link is weird. Our link is very weird. As you said, it's just on a roller coaster today. Well, I'm not gonna date SXL. Oh, dang. All right. Okay. Let's. If there's another song you'd like to.
No, we could try Thriller.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It could be Bad, Thriller, Ghostbuster, even.
Yeah.
We could do, there's something you'd like. Tell me.
Let's do Thriller because I haven't done that one before, but I have done Bad quite a bit.
Okay. We could also have, if some people want Bad, they could add it. If you want, guys, you can try to crisscross and watch in Merm's channel.
Look at my song list and then see if there's anything
Yeah.
in common.
Yeah, there is. Well, we could try an improv too, and maybe a bit of Defying Gravity, because it's a fun. You say it like it would be overfiring. It's not that it would be overfiring. You know what I mean. It's just like I don't want dates
If you
by
do
my.
improv, if you do the main piano part, I can do improv on the melodica. Because I know when you improv, you tend to stick mostly
Yes.
to the same key, and the
Yes.
modulations make sense. Whereas I'm like,
Yeah. Yes, we could do that, and you could play one of your
Okay.
multiple instruments, and we could do it.
I'm not gonna bust out the violin right now, but
No, you choose. Okay, you want to do an improv first, and afterwards we can do Thriller?
Yes.
Perfect, let's do that.
Too many comments highlighted. What? I don't see any highlights.
Yeah, we don't see the highlights in here. It might be because SXL is getting tagged over and over again, so that's the highlights you see. Okay, let's go in. Do you have a preferred?
Any key.
No? Let's go with G minor. G minor. Okay, let's try to have some. You'll see a little bit of the. There, just a tiny bit. Okay, like that. Cool.
much lip muscles it actually takes to play this thing.
It is not that easy
Yeah.
to play. Oh. By the way, Andy. This is
Oh my
Thank
god.
you for 2 and 22. Yes. So I don't know if you heard the theme song that Andy had for. By the way,
Yes.
I'm back. Andy didn't stay for the whole. It's peaceful, so I decided to come back. And at the end of the theme
It's got a little
song,
meow.
there's a meow, and it's actually Matt Gaddy playing on the.
Did you not have a cat piano at that point?
Andy just wanted Matt to do it because there is.
So he gets royalties for it every time?
No.
Oh.
He did it for the clout.
Oh.
So
fair
there's
enough.
3 different people who played cameos in there. It's all Andy's enemies. So Matt Gaddy plays the cat piano.
Yes.
Jonathan Ong plays the flute. There's a flute in
Yeah.
there. And Trevor plays the piano.
Oh my god, of
So,
course.
yeah.
Of course.
So Andy blackmailed each of them to play
Nice.
on the so she would have power over them on the theme song.
Perfect.
Yeah. So hello, Aïe Poulet. Bonjour. J'espère que ça va bien. But anyway, Meow, thank you for the 2 and 22. Silverstorm, thanks for
You
the.
get an Oprah.
Yeah, normally they would, but it's back at Andy's house, so she'll have to put it when she's back. Not today. We don't have Oprahs in here, unfortunately. And anyway, I would not put Oprahs on the wall. This is not my job, it's Andy's job. I do whatever I want when I'm on the stream. She probably promised them French strings. Well, I did promise them a wheel. If normally it takes $500 in a week, and they have a special wheel, like stupid challenges and whatnot that
Yeah.
she does on the stream. But that's not me. The whole weird sketch things, it's going to be only Andy on her stream. I'm not doing them.
Thank you.
You know that mug? It
It's
is
a
a
Doctor Who mug?
it's a Doctor Who mug.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
little
people
police
do
box.
love.
I've got a Rick and Morty mug over here. I forgot I even had a tea.
Huh. Yeah, it's more like flavored water now.
Not very warm.
But yeah.
That's what we get for waiting 2.5 hours before drinking it.
I thought you were taking the money. Yes. No. I'm taking the money, but she has to do the wheel anyway. That's because she's bound by the amount raised in a week, so she would have to do the weekly wheel. But yeah, you're
Hi,
here for this
Willow.
goth look. Hi Willow, how you doing? So this is actually not a goth look. Andy is not there today, so I'm Celine. I'm her cousin, and this is Mermaid Unicorn,
Hello,
aka
lovely.
Gothica.
Or no, Dethica.
Dethica, yes.
Dethica.
So, but if you like, we're now in their setup. So if you want to follow
Yes,
them,
this is my studio. Welcome on in.
Yes.
I also stream music on my channel and video games and cooking and adventures and all sorts of stuff. So my next stream is tomorrow, I think.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, tomorrow night.
No, and you have
It's a
your
nighttime stream because my live gig. Yeah, I'm playing a
yes.
show tomorrow.
Will
night.
you be a lo-fi girl on the show?
I might. I'm also thinking I might just redo this look. Like this is fierce.
It is very fierce. Say
Very
that, Willow.
fierce.
Either
I
way, I'm
just-
gay and you're gorgeous. So see,
Shucks. Thank you, Willow.
have a great day, Willow.
I hate wearing wigs for longer than like 5 hours, so I don't know if
Yeah.
I would want to put the weave back on.
I'm very glad that this is my actual hair, so I don't have to wear a wig.
yeah.
A little bit different
Gets a
when
little itchy,
yes.
especially when you're rocking out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the last time, okay, no, not the last time. The last time I wore a wig to one of my gigs, everybody thought it was real, and they were freaking out why I cut my hair and dyed it orange. They're like, what the hell? But the time before that, it was at a rave, and I was a featured act, and I had this big rainbow, crazy, like, kawaii pastel girl wig, and I didn't pin it down properly, so it kept slipping back off of my head the whole time I was performing. I was like trying to jump around stage and like pulling my weave back on my head. It was so awkward. I'm like, oh my god.
And it's a pain. That's why I don't do them. I absolutely felt, oh, thank you very
thanks.
much. It's super appreciated. You're gonna love their stream. It's super full of
love
positivity.
my
Yeah.
street.
Yeah, and they have a sick voice. Let's display it. Let's do something in which you can actually sing. Let's see, what do I have in my
I'm gonna
songs
take a
that you
nap
might-
after stream.
Of course you can. Of course.
Napping in my coffin, watching as the sun sets.
What I do despise Disney. I won't play anything Disney related. Let's see what we have. Oh, I think that actually
So
have.
many French.
Yeah, there's a lot of French songs. I thought Céline had. Oh, we could play Bad. Oh, we did. So we could. Yeah, let's play Bad. You do it a lot, as you said. Because
My
I'm
microphone
bad.
is moving on its own.
It's moving? Oh, yeah, indeed. Erwan, thank you for the follow. Silverstorm, thanks for the resub for 21 months. And let's play Your Blood is Mine. Gonna tell you right. Oh, by the way, if people donate or sub, you can suggest songs. And if we both know them, we'll try to do them. Is it that?
You're singing about butts?
Well, that's what they say here. Your blood is mine.
All right.
Well, everybody's butt is mine in there. Just
Okay.
a matter of fact. I'm gonna tell you right and show your face in broad daylight. I'm telling you how I feel. It hurts your mind. Don't shoot to kill. Lay on this, me all night. Not sure where it is though. Giving you a count of 3. You show your stuff, I'll let it be. I'm telling you, just watch your mouth. I know your game, what you're about. Gonna say the sky's the limit, and me, that's really true. But my friend, you see nothing. Just wait till I get through, because I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm really, really bad. You know I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm really, really bad. You know I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm really, really bad. And the whole world has the answer right now. Just tell you once again, who's bad? What is love? You're doing wrong. Gonna lock you up before too long. Your lying eyes gonna tell you right. So listen up, don't make a fight. You walk as sheep, you're not a man. You're throwing stones to hide your hands. You say the sky's the limit. To me, that's really true. My friend, did you say nothing? Just wait till I get through, because I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm really, really bad. You know I'm bad, I'm bad, really, really bad. You know I'm bad, I'm bad, really, really bad. And the whole world wants to answer right now to tell you once again who's bad. Who's bad? Who you gonna call? Yeah, no, I'm bad, I'm bad. You know it's really bad. You know I'm bad, really, really bad. You know I'm bad, bad, and really, really bad. You know I'm bad, you know it. You know, you know, you know, you know I'm bad. I'm bad, I'm bad. Ooh, you know I'm bad, really, really bad. You know I'm bad, you know I'm really bad. Ooh, bad, I'm bad, really, really bad. And the world has to answer right now. Just tell you once again who's bad.
Where did you get the lyrics? Because these aren't the original lyrics.
I don't know where I did. This is the one I have, and it might have been from a reprise of somewhere. Cause
your butt is mine, gonna tell you right. Just show your face. And that's not the words.
I have not.
I
had
thought
the
you
original.
wrote like a parody. This
I
is
didn't.
not-
I didn't. What are the original ones? This first I didn't do it. It's Andy's, but maybe she did something stupid with it. But what are the original?
Those are
ones?
not. That's not the words. Your butt is mine.
Well, I do like
I thought
that
it was your
Andy
blood is mine.
fracked it up. Oh, maybe it's blood. So maybe that's actually a parody.
Hold on.
Andy would be very, very on par with having a parody song instead of the original one. It actually is the lyrics. Those are definitely the words. Pencil says these are the words. Your
I
butt
don't know
is
if I
mine.
trust pencils though.
I wouldn't. Sometimes he does say the truth, but
Oh
But-
my god, what?
it is. Google says your butt is mine. It is. Well, what about Celine? Does she always stream here with Andy or somewhere too? So actually, this is Andy's.
Oh my
stream
God.
Normally. It is. So
It
these
is.
are the original lyrics.
I thought it was your blood is mine.
I do
Your
like-
blood is mine.
I prefer blood.
Cause he's bad, but he says your butt is mine.
Yeah. he's
That's just sexual harassment.
Yeah. Maybe he just thinks he owns them.
And it just I was like, that sounds so French because I'm telling you on how I feel. Wouldn't you just say I'm telling you how I feel?
And maybe it's just weird English. The English is weird.
It's his first language.
But maybe he's just weird. People are weird. The English is weird. So yeah, basically this is Andy's stream normally. She looks a bit like me, but we're nothing alike. So please don't confuse me for Andy. But you probably will, if you followed today, you probably will be disappointed by Andy's stream afterwards. But she's going to stream on Saturday because it's her 2 years anniversary, on Twitch.
Thank you, Pua. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Pua, I agree. I agree that blood would be way better. Like, your blood is mine. Gonna tell you what. Yes, that's way better. I would do that too. Great girls. Thank you, Pudding Tail Chen. Welcome. Air1, thanks for the follow. And Pencils, thank you for the. Who are you gonna call? Wait. Oh, that's serious. Have you seen him? Yeah, he loves punching.
You're
and
offended.
yeah.
I'm sorry that I thought you were wrong in thinking that the Michael Jackson song, the hit,
Yeah.
Bad, starts off with the sentence,
Uh-huh.
your butt is mine.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense in my fantasy, okay?
Yeah, neither in mine.
Nor my reality. It
I
just
prefer-
doesn't make sense.
Prefer blood too. That artist is serious, like Cereus. It's serious. That's his name, and he punches. He just wants to emulate me as much as he wants, and that's why I'm still a little bit. I don't want to date a fan. I kind of want to play with them a little bit, but I don't want to date a fan. So that's why I prefer a Sixel, because he's just more aloof. I do like people who are a little bit aloof, and it's just like, yeah, take my money. First he pays me.
Oh, okay. So it's
So it's just like a little bit more
warranted.
interesting for me. But yeah. You've cast a spell on us. I got a spell on you.
You did that one.
We did it. What do we have in there? What could we do that could be very dark? That is a normally very up song. Oh, do you know somebody I used to know?
Yeah.
We could do that. That's a
Yeah,
great
we could
one.
do a
as you
loop
said.
too.
Let's do a loop with that one.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Cinnamon wants a sugar
I might
daddy.
need
Understood.
to
Oh, I'm not asking
swap
for no sugar
chairs.
daddy. I am just saying, if you pay me, there's much more chance I will like you. But there is no guarantee that I will do anything for you. Just like money, very much.
I might need to just swap the chairs so I can get the foot.
Do it.
The footsies.
I might add some flute in there.
Why can't I hear it?
costume. This isn't a costume, it's a way of life.
Yes. Miguel San, merci pour le follow. Maybe we could add something. Do you loop with the microphone too?
Yeah, I can do the loop on the microphone.
We could do it like ooh.
Oh yeah, I usually do that on the second channel
Oh, perfect.
so that I can adjust it. Okay. Or did you want to loop the flute?
Maybe we could. I'll play it far just for you.
So wait, let me take it out. It's like super quiet, but it's in there.
Yeah, it's okay. We don't need it. Oh, is it? Does it record there?
No, it's this one. This is the one that records it. Oh, okay. Okay. There you go. Sorry, that's Satan escaping. I'm just gonna add like a. So we have some bass in there. I'll just add the. Right.
about this thing is that we can improvise and actually, like, just feel the song and feel the music. And
we
it's-
never know who's gonna take the harmony though. It's
That's
always like, I
true.
said, oh, I'll go melody. Oh,
Yeah,
no,
and we had
we're
the
both
same
harmony.
reflex to try
Yeah.
to. Okay, well, wait, oh no,
It's
no.
like, oh no, I'm gonna be. Oh no, you're. Oh,
I
okay.
know. Welcome to the new viewers.
Welcome,
Ryuki.
readers.
Ryuki. Oh my god.
We were just talking about Ryuk.
Yes, we're talking
got
about
a little
Ryuk,
thinking
and
around the back
how are you referencing to Ryuk in Death Note? Because we were referencing to Death Note just before. So if you are, thanks for bringing your people. If you're not, thanks for bringing your people anyway.
Yeah.
We do love new people in there. This is Mermaid Unicorn. You can follow them and they're
You can follow me
fabulous.
on my channel.
On
if
their
you
channel.
want. But no pressure though.
Yes, no pressure,
do
but
it.
you have to do it because if you don't, I will
I
eat
ate
you.
too much pizza and my tummy hurts.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You did say that you have to eat not too much.
Yeah.
Because you
I
don't
made a
fit in your-
mistake.
You made a mistake. It's
I made
okay.
a
We all
mistake.
made mistakes. But thank you very much for the follows in there. You both sound really good. Thank you very much. So it's our second collab together.
Well,
we it's
first with you, of course.
Yes.
I've
yes.
never
Yes,
gotten
it's
to
first
meet
with me.
Celine before.
Yeah, normally Andy the Frenchie is there. Today, this is not Andy the Frenchie, I'm Celine. So I'm sorry for all of those who really wanted to see. Well, actually, nobody wants to see Andy the Frenchie normally. They all want to see me.
I do.
Well, she's a kind of person. It's okay because I prefer being here only from time to time
Yeah.
anyway. Don't want to be there all the time. You're late. It's okay. You don't. There's not such a thing at late today here. We'll probably go for a few minutes still. We were about to go until maybe something like 7. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
You can still follow Andy the Frenchie to play Celine. Well, I
There is
prefer
a
that you
catch.
give me all the money instead. And also, if you give the money
I would
here,
love some money, please.
yes, we'll take the money and won't give it to Andy. Celine, have you seen the film Aline? Is it after you, another Celine? Celine, my name is just after my name. There is no coincidence to any other Celine that exists, and especially not Celine Dion. Especially not.
No.
As people think. Ça change de voir dans ses couleurs, trop bien le style. Merci, Miali. But c'est parce que je suis pas Andy, je suis Celine. This is my only style. It's very better than Andy's PJs, in my opinion.
So sad.
I like both your aesthetic and musical talents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Where are
that.
you from? What do you do on your stream? Normally in the Ryuki. It's going to be
I do
different.
music. You a music
Yes.
streamer?
Are you a musician? Are you
What
a gamer?
brings you in today?
What brings you to this tomb of darkness and soul
rebirth.
and rebirth? We are kind of good
Oh, okay,
witches
cool.
though. You're a gamer.
Nice. You see my Gretsch in the background? I've got tons more guitars scattered throughout the house, but my Gretsch is my go-to for performance.
Yeah. Merci, Vero. Witches, I'll take the compliments but not too much compliments, please, because I don't enjoy them very much.
No.
But I'll take it. I'm not Andy, though I am Celine. And yes, of course, I do look good. Of course I do. Mermaid Unicorn and Andy the Frenchie both look wonderful. J'adore vraiment ces looks, merci. Pas Andy, mais Celine, thank you. Thank you for using the right name. It's very appreciated. We have, Bad has been played.
Yes. Didn't know it was about
Somebody I
butts.
used to know has been played too. We could play. Do you know Fly Me to the Moon?
Yeah.
We could do a minor version of Fly Me to the Moon, a dark version. We could try something like that. Let's see. It's not too complicated. Ooh, we could. Oh, do you have strings?
Like an organ? Or
No, strings like full strings.
Not really good ones on this.
It doesn't have to be very good ones. Just put some reverb on it and we'll be good. Like sections. Can witches from hell have voices from heaven? Well, who says we are from hell? We're probably just good. Just all cello. Yeah, thank you, Pencils, for that. Very insightful. Yes, that can work. Okay, wait. Oh, maybe I can do this or pads maybe. Oh yeah, that good. Fly me to the moon.
I don't know how. Because it's already in a minor key.
Yes.
Really? It kind of is.
It's just how we play it.
Okay. I'll lead the chords though if I'm doing it.
Do I have the chords here? I can play the chords. There it is. There they are. But I do like the yeah, I like that. All right, let's do it.
Basically,
Rond, kind de rond, yeah, rond. Yes, it's
Yeah.
sig de quinte in French.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, baby, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words,
I mean, who would not fall in love with that? It's just perfect. See? It's a different way of the. Yeah, the Andy too, but I like to do it a little bit different sometimes. I can do it. The funny is I can do all these things, but it smudges my makeup a little bit.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I have to be careful
It just
with
looks
that.
like you've eaten like a freshly harvested quartz.
I do like that. I do
No.
like that
A
look.
little bit of blood smooches just
Yeah, blood and
brings
pizza.
out that primal attraction, you know? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, you can feast upon
Yeah,
fresh
and
flesh
still
because you are
look
a
fierce.
huntress and a warrior.
Yes,
And
still
capable of capturing prey.
I can, and I still can eat pizza. I have
And
it both
pizza,
ways.
too.
I
And
can
pizza.
have. I can
Could be
have-
pizza sauce, could be, you know, corpse blood, whatever.
You don't know.
You know,
You never
depends if you're a cop.
But I can eat the cup too. It's just
Just more paperwork. you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's a little bit more complicated to get out afterwards. Deux jumelles. We're not twins, but thank you. We do look alike a little bit. There's
We're both wearing black, so we got that going for us.
We do have that. We do have that. In a video games. Oh, do we look like we're in a video game? I would love to have a video game character made after me.
Definitely.
That would be.
I feel
just-
like some Resident Evil happening right now.
Yeah,
I've got like the lacy corset thing.
You do.
and the pentacle necklace.
Yeah.
On the back, I've got like the corset, like the.
Ooh, that's
Ooh la
just
la.
gorgeous. That's just that.
You
This
can't see it,
bow,
my hair's so
this
long.
here,
There you go.
just gorgeous.
Little truffle.
Yeah,
My little truffle. My ruffle truffle.
your ruffle truffle. Who's
My truffle
qui est la
ruffle.
plus méchante? I'm probably the meanest, but just by.
I act tough, but it's just because I'm a sweetheart.
Yes, that's. I don't act tough, but I can be very cruel. I love to. I do it with a smile. That's the thing. And with a
I'm
little bit
cruel,
of
but
blood.
like in a passive aggressive way.
You're just cool like Ice Queen, so the same kind of coolness. Showing off their butt, yeah, of course. Why, with a butt like that, who wouldn't be showing it? Huh?
Am I right?
It's just normal. Yeah. The Transylvania Pet Store sisters, but less green. We're not green. We're very not green. I am not Elphaba. Don't mistake me for a vampire or for Elphaba. I am a very much my own person. We could if there's nothing else happening, we could do a few more songs and then call this a day. I mean, people in the chat are there and they're having fun with us. We can choose a few songs and then
Sure. I mean, I think we're still going to karaoke tonight. If my
Yes.
stomach doesn't completely erupt after this, because I can feel it bubbling like the cauldron that I have in my basement.
Yes, be
Like,
sure to
I have
take
two
it.
cauldrons in my basement, if you know what I mean. Hey.
Yeah, I'm going to leave your own cauldron to that, and I'll use the other one to bake something.
We already did play that one today.
We did very well, but if you want another song that could be like in these areas, just ask away. We might do it.
Yeah, well, you.
Oh no, again!
Bad doggy. Oh, but it's so cute though.
He's cute. He's
So cute.
He's very cute. I love him. He can be bad. Celine hates him, but Vero, hi, how you doing? Celine hates puns. Yeah, she does. Like,
I noticed.
Yeah.
I noticed. She pieced right out. She was like,
Yep.
later.
yep, later, not coming back. What kind of potions are you preparing?
Merci,
in those potions?
Apocalypse. Merci encore.
Merci. Sorry, Celine, I still prefer
Take it
Andy.
away.
You know how it is. There's another dog, by the way. Shami is not the only dog you can summon. Bisbee is also, like, my sister's dog, has also an alert.
I want to see the dog.
Yeah, Bisbee
Chat,
is...
show me the dog.
Show the dog.
Show me the doggy.
Show the dog.
Show me the doggy.
Maybe it will happen. I
Big
think
doggies, no whammies.
I think Bisbee is 8.87. So for 887 bits or for $8.87, I think it's Bisbee. And Finn is also true. Finn is also in an alert. He's there, but with Shannon, it's a little bit more expensive. This one is less expensive. But any witch rap, do you know? Yeah, they have great rapping skills. Which song do you want to rap? You gotta have.
Oh, they just want to hear me rap?
Yeah, I
I
can't.
could do some Cocoa Butter Kisses.
I can't rap for
We did
crap.
WAP last time.
We did. I know one rap is in
I was
French.
gonna say we should do some Evanescence just because I literally look like Amy Lee. Right
We
now.
do need to. Okay, we can
Literally
do
am
that.
cosplaying Amy Lee, basically.
Okay, let's do Evanescence. Like,
Did
this-
you want
which
to do
one?
like the wake me up? Okay,
We
wake
could.
up.
Okay, I
Then
could
you
do that. I
be-
can wake up. I could do that. I'm good with that.
Because I haven't played it before, but I think I could figure it out. I usually
Yeah.
do like. song started playing Ave Maria, I was like,
Oh yeah, it does.
I was like, no,
look like Ave
not that
Maria.
one, not that one.
Okay, we could do
But-
"Wake Me Up Inside." Let's
Okay,
take
you can
the
try it.
lyrics somewhere. I don't think I have them
You
here.
keep putting the mouse over here.
I know. I want to use it. Wake me up and you wake me up. I can do that. By the way, hi for the raiders and people who. This is Andy. I'm Andy. So I'm just taking
it's
over
called Bring Me
Student's
the
body
Light.
for a second. Just for a second, because Student has weaknesses and she gets thrown out of that body when she sees dogs. She hates dogs. So, love my moment with you girls. Oh, thank you, Benoit. Okay.
Are we gonna take turns being the dude?
Oh,
Or do you want to do the...
because the guy says only wake me up. That's what he does. Huh? I'm good with that.
But then he does like the... Okay.
What I don't remember this other part. We'll figure it out.
I'll give you some real rap after this, but this
We'll
is like
just
rap
wait.
enough.
Yes.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors, leading you down into my car, where I become so numb? Without a soul, my spirit sleeping somewhere cold till you find it and lead it back home.
Wake me up.
Wake me up inside. Wake me up inside. Call my name and save me from the dark. Bid my blood to red before I come undone. Save me from the nothing I've become. Now that I know that I'm without, you just can't leave me. Breathe into me and make me real. Bring me to life. Wake me up inside. Wake me up inside. Call my name and save me from the dark. Bid my blood to rise before I come unsaid. Save me from the nothing I've become. Bring me to life. I've been living a lie. There's nothing inside, baby. Bring me to life. Frozen inside without your touch.
You're good.
Without
Keep
your
going.
love, darling. Only you are the life among the dead. All this time, I can't believe I couldn't see. Kept in the dark, but you were there in front of me. I've been sleeping 1,000 years, it seems. Gotta open my eyes to everything.
Without a thought, without a voice, without a soul. Don't let me die here. There must be something more.
Bring me to life.
Wake me up.
Wake me up inside.
I can't wake up.
Wake me up inside. Call my name and save me from the dark. Bid my blood to rise before I come undone. Save me from the nothing I've become. Bring me to life. Bring me to life.
How
Oh
dare you
my
bring me
God.
back mid-song? They bring me back mid-song. I had
don't.
no idea.
Yeah, nobody knows that part. They just know the wake me up.
Yeah, no. I just...
Evanescence is here. Hey, I like this band.
Yeah, that's the cat.
I never met the cat.
Yeah, the cat is.
Hiding.
So
Makes me miss my cat.
I think that Andy freaked it up and said that the other dog was 8 and 86, but actually that's the cat. So probably it's 8
No
and
refunds.
85.
Your money is ours now.
Yeah, it's
You have to try again though.
yeah.
Give you goosebumps. Yes, I'm definitely gonna steal a clip of that
Of course you
for
can.
sure. I think the last time around, I figured out what the hell chords I was playing. 'Cause
Yeah,
if these
it
are
was-
wrong. Of course they're wrong.
Of course they're wrong.
It could
It's
never be
guitar
right.
tab. They're not right.
All
So
right,
the funny thing is they actually brought me back while you were in the song. So at the beginning, Andy was singing with this stupid voice like "Where's me?" I would not do that. So I know that the beginning will not probably be good, but the
Okay.
ending where
Yeah,
I
there was
came
at least
in,
20 seconds of
Yes.
solid music.
there's better song. Andy said 8 and 87. I'm not sure. I think on her website, exclamation point alerts, you can find this bay, but I don't want you to do it because it's a dog. The cats I don't mind too much. Qualcawet, thank you for the 8 and 86. It is appreciated. Cocoa Butter Kisses. Okay, this is go for
This
it.
is the rap one.
Go
There's-
for it.
Okay, it's a bit of a loop. I think that's fast enough. It might be too slow, which is good. If it's a rap, we don't want it too fast. We'd rather have it too slow. But
Yeah.
Ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby. No matter how far, call my name, be there and worry. You don't have to worry.
Oh, Carlito's in there. Hello, Carlito.
hello.
He's a French Canadian peasant.
You have to. This is where I do a bunch of harmonies and stuff. Alright, cool.
Cocoa butter kisses, cocoa butter kisses. 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 Cigarettes on cigarettes, my mama think I stink. I got burnos in my hoodies, all my homies think I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Yeah, I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Oh, we go now. Cigarettes on cigarettes, my mama think I stink. I got burnos in my hoodies, all my homies think I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Yeah, I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Hey, okie dokie, alky, alky, feel low-key like the lip blow. You go blow the loudie, Saudi and Saudi, Saudi. You wildin' up a peyote, you wildin' like a coyote. If I sip any more heady, my belly just bought me out. He pulled up beside a hoodie, Starsky and Hutch Dougie. I just opened up a pack in an hour. I asked my lucky tonight should be yelling, fuck me too. We should be yelling. fuck me. Used to like orange cassettes, Timmy, Tommy, and Chucky, Jesus, Reese's Pieces. See, Jesus loved me, put Visine inside my eyes, so my grandma would fucking hotmail. Generation above me, know you still remember me. My afro looked like daddy's, y'all taught me how to go hunt and play on cigarettes on cigarettes. My mama think I stink. Burn holes in my hoodies, on my homies stink. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Cigarettes and cigarettes, my mama think I stink. Burn holes in my hoodies, on my homies stink. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. I can't breathe in this corset. This is hard. Cocoa butter kisses. I smoke a little something, but I don't inhale. Everywhere that I go, everywhere to be asking how it's going, say it's going well. Go figure, Victor's light skin, Jesus got me feeling like Colin Powell. All praise to the guy, God knows he's a pro like Cohen. Tell, check me, take me to the better, let me know me well. I mean, you see, normally, G, now she wouldn't kick a wet farmer field, because these days it gets so high, they burn trees, smoke chlorophyll, so they can't feel shit, face, and 15 hits on this elevated train to the craziest thing. I'm feeling like Lauryn Hill. Miseducated, my dick delegate, a rapid felony. They said I should've never made it, probably should've been dead or in jail. Dead me dead, enough of that jazz. Asshole ass, hands top of that glass. Over there, yeah, ice cubes to the bar. Rip break that, take a tug, then pass. I think we all addicted. Oh, I think we all addicted. Really though, I think we all addicted. I think we're all addicted. I think we all addicted. I think we're all addicted. I think we all addicted. Really though, I think we all addicted. Cigarettes on cigarettes, my mama think I stink. Got burn-ons in my hoodies, on my homies think it's dank. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Cocoa butter kisses. One more time so I can catch my breath. Cigarette on cigarette, my mama think I stank. Cover all my hoodies, all my homies think it's dead. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Here we go. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Twist it. I can make a flow with a pattern with a pitter patter, 2 C's, 2 to be in a javelin and a goofy. Trying hard not to be addicted to a groupie. Ended up on a mother cover in a Gucci. You see, I have to be a guy but a goofy. You be blown about drugs in a Uzi. That's a new principle. Sometimes I'll be about some hoes. Sometimes I'ma wanna make a movie. And when it comes to rapping fast on the Higgs boson, and though my style freakish, I can still break your body down to 5 pieces like I did Voltron. Cause I'm addicted to the craft and love it off of OG. Know me, I'm the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the dope. See, never scared of me. Spirits methamphetamine lyrics, scrolling like I'm off a codeine, low key. Don't be so judgmental. Even though I'm reminiscent if I don't know what I miss is. I'ma end up figuring out that it's home and my mother and my grandmother cocoa butter kiss is. This is just a testament to the ones that raised me, the ones that I praise and I'm thanking. I wanna hug them for the chronic of my growth, and I wanna get a hug and I can't cause I'm stanky. Never too old for a spanking. Cigarettes on cigarettes, my mama think I stink. Got burned over in my hoodies, all my homies think it's dank. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. Woo, woo, cocoa butter kisses. Oh, cigarettes on cigarettes, my mama think I stink. Burn holes in my hoodies, all my homies think it's dank. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. My cocoa butter kisses. rapping, so I'm like, okay, I'll do the one rap that I like know almost by heart.
Yeah, that's.
I also know WAP by
insane.
heart, but I can't breathe. Like I'm like trying to breathe, and I'm like,
Then
like
don't
of
pass
course
out on
it.
me. Don't pass out on me, please.
No, I'm not gonna pass out. I was just like, I'm trying to breathe, and every time I do, my body gets squished.
Oh, look at pencils wanting
Thank
to
you,
put that to a
pencils.
3, 3, 3, and 33.
Halfway there.
Halfway there. We have like maybe 20 minutes.
There's
more.
no time.
No time
For a cat piano sacrifice.
Basson, thank you very much for the host for 108 people. Merci beaucoup.
What?
Isn't it?
That's so many people.
That is. So
Like
many
that was
people.
that happens during the song.
Yes.
Oh my God! What? $100 is not a big end. I don't think we can go higher. $100 is a lot of chicken. I guess I can go retire. Hey Dad, I'm rich now! Exclamation point rich!
Is that? It just ends like that.
Yes.
That's
it
very
does.
random.
It is very random. I
Thank
hate
you,
it.
Exisel.
Sixel with another $100.
Now it's all wonky. Now it's 43333.
Yes, we have to
Three,
go.
three, three.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys can fix it, but thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for that. Also,
I can afford to flush my guts out after this.
now you can. I think that was worth it. We have another Sunfire. Welcome, Sunfire.
to the stream.
How are you
Welcome to the stream. How you doing? How you being? Great to have you. Nice to meet you. Welcome on in. I hope it's a treat for you because we're with Andy today and we already played a lot of songs, but we got one right for you and it can't be wrong because it's right. All right, let's go.
Sunfire TV.
Come on.
Welcome to the stream.
Welcome to the stream.
Sunfire TV.
With me and Celine, you know it's Mermaid Unicorn. Mermaid Unicorn and the Frenchies.
Sunfire TV.
Andy the Frenchie. We got Canadian representation on the stream. Hey, it's a
Mermaid Unicorn. Go follow Mermaid Unicorn.
Canadian invasion. Welcome to the stream.
Oh yeah, blah blah from Spain.
Sunfire TV.
Sunfire.
On the street.
Sunfire TV. Sunfire TV.
Drummer extraordinaire with all her hair. Sunfire TV.
She played with her hair. That's only.
Oh yes. Yes. Yes.
Sunfire TV.
With the hair.
With the hair.
She has hair.
She has hair.
And she drums.
Drumming.
Drumming in the hair. Drumming in the hair. Drumming in the hair.
Drumming in the hair. Drumming in the hair.
Okay, hi.
Welcome.
Can we play you something?
Has new
We
intros.
tried to do Evanescence not too long ago, but
Yes, it was very good. Welcome, guys. By the way, I am Celine. I'm not Andy the Frenchie. I tried to emulate her for a few seconds. I think I did it very well. So you do look metal AF.
yes, welcome.
Thank you very much. So this is normally a very colorful stream, which I hate because Andy the Frenchie is way too much of a colorful person for me. I am her cousin Celine. This is Mermaid Unicorn, who is currently Dethica. You can follow their channel just there. And if you want a song, this is Evanescence, is it? We could do an Evanescence for you guys. I think they would like it. So normally on Andy's channel, she plays all these Disney Broadway music. Oh my god.
Who is that?
This is Andy's friend. So this is an alert for 69 and 69.
I hope that was worth it.
Gracefully Lyris, thank you for the 69 and 69. This stream makes me so happy. Well, that didn't make me happy. That guy is way too happy. But thank you very much for the 69 and 69. If you want to see all the alerts that are possible, it's exclamation point alerts. And in the meantime, we'll sing an Evanescence song.
Suppressed by all my child's fears.
Dropping frames, it will get
And
bad.
if you have to leave, I wish that you would just leave. 'Cause your presence still lingers here, and it won't leave me alone. These wounds won't seem to heal. This pain is just too real. There's just too much that time cannot erase. You cried, I'd wipe away all of your tears. You scream, I'd fight away all of your fears. I held your hand through all of these years, but you still have all of me. You used to captivate me by your resonating light, and now I'm blinded by the life you left behind. Your face that haunts my once pleasant dreams, your face that chased away all the sanity in me. These wounds won't seem to heal. This pain is just too real. There's just too much that time cannot erase. You cried, I'd wipe away all of your tears. And you scream, I'd fight away all of your fears. And I held your hand through all of these years. You still have. I tried so hard to tell myself that you're gone, but though you're still with me, I've been alone You cried, I'd wipe away all of your tears. You scream, I'd fight away all of your fears. I held your hand through all of these years, but you still have all of me.
That was beautiful. That's a gorgeous, gorgeous
I
song.
love that song.
Thank you for all the follows, people. Be sure to also follow Mermaid Unicorn Just in there
Yeah.
if you like, because this is their stream setup.
Hi, welcome to my stream.
We are on their stream.
But last time we did a collab. Well, not the win this week. We did
Exactly.
another one this week where I dressed up as Cat Piano, and
Andy was here.
and Andy was here dressed as a beautiful
Yeah, she did-
mermaid,
she
like
did
a
very
purple
well.
pink mermaid. It was gorgeous. The
I
colors
have
of-
to see it
Oh.
was okay. It was okay. She did sometimes she manages to look good. I am mature enough to recognize when she does and she makes an
Mm-hmm. Yes.
effort, and that was actually
Oh
pretty.
my god, gorgeous!
It was-
stunting, as
was
they
okay.
say.
It was
The realness,
It was a realness.
mermaid realness.
Yeah. She could have made an effort with the tail, though. She could have brought a tail or something to really make it real. But I'd say that this
That's okay.
was
We
good.
had enough things in my closet to lend that we made it happen.
Yes, she did. She did good.
What looks did you try to while growing up? I tried looking like a normal person. It didn't work for me.
This
This is what I look like growing up. Like you.
Yes, yeah. You actually.
You were a goth.
I was a goth emo kid. My skin was even paler than this. Like, this is probably my actual skin color when I actually go outside sometimes.
So,
But,
I am always like that, although I don't show up a lot on stream. So for those who don't know the channel, normally Eddie the Frenchie always wears these PJs.
oh, I have the pictures.
No, that's you.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is 13-year-old me. I'll get the little zoom. That's 13-year-old me, okay?
wow. Wow.
The glow up. It's me, I swear.
Yeah, I recognize the smile.
There's also this. I used to have bangs that covered my eyes.
So you would see everything very
I
well.
couldn't see anything. That's partly why I'm blind right now. I had this hair for a bit too with the red stripes. Don't ask me why I have these on, because people are always like, "You were goth," and I'm like, "Yes, I have the,
why
the
not?
shots to prove it. Look, I did my own photo shoot in my backyard.
Wow,
You can see the angst.
that's precious.
That was
I love
that was the MySpace days.
I love it.
You can tell how old I am because I was into MySpace when it was a thing. I look older than 13. Yeah, that's what all the creepy older men said when they were trying to pick me up
Oh my
when I was young.
gosh.
They're like, oh, you don't look 13. I'm like,
I don't.
you look 21, so maybe you should.
Yeah, for some reason, people would not do that to me. I think they're a little bit afraid of my hexing them. Maybe I'm not sure. I intimidate people for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was super super cute. I love that.
Yeah.
I actually always look that
I will
way.
never be that cute again.
Oh, you can.
But it's okay because I can be
Wait, you are gorgeous, which is different.
drop
Yes.
dead gorgeous.
See, it's there's a moment in your life where you want to stop being cute and just being
Yeah.
fabulous instead.
Just fabulous.
Yes, we do
I'm
like
not a cutie
fabulous.
patootie. Cuties are for babies.
Exactly. See, Andy is cute, so it's okay. She can have that, and I can be just.
Andy is from Quebec. Andy's a Frenchie. I'm from Ontario, which is right à côté de Québec. But I travaille en Québec depuis comme 2 années à une course de golf.
Yeah,
So I speak very well franglais.
that's
Très
true.
bon franglais.
You speak way better French than lots of people I know in
Yeah.
Montreal. But yeah, me.
Il y a plusieurs des gens qui déménagé à Montréal parce que c'est pas cher. Like
No.
it's not expensive to live there, and it's like a big city. Like it's like a Toronto but French.
compared to Toronto,
Yeah.
Toronto is very much more expensive than Montreal.
I know I don't look 13 now. My
Of
boobs
course
are
not.
actually smaller now, though. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that on your
No,
stream.
it's okay. We talk about boobs every time, and also it's not me. Like Andy doesn't like it. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't mind
Yeah.
saying it on my stream.
Somehow I lost boobs the older I got.
Yeah.
I just got skinnier. So
lasting boobs. Yeah. But who needs? Oh, again. I'll be back. Squirrel really likes me.
I love this song. I want this alert for my channel.
It's a cute alert. I could, you know what? I can send one of that. There's like 7 or 8 different songs with that dog going, so I could send you one.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
Yeah, I don't
The
mind.
people would have to know. They would have to be here to know.
Yes, yeah, they would have. It's like a secret alert.
Is
Only
that
the people
squirrel
who know.
special alert? Emote? What is
She
that?
loves this. Oh no, so this is just Andy
Pout.
being. Yeah, they're just mad that Sidin's got out. The pouting is like.
Yeah.
It's just grumbly because.
I don't think we have a pout emote. We just have Merm Satan.
Yeah, the pout emote is just because lots of times I'm just mad at people. You know, it's like the bar and bar. The. So we use it a lot. When
Like
people
that one?
are mad, they're just mad. They're just pouting right now.
I see.
Because Sidin's got drowned away by the
I
dog.
would love your. Actually, I don't know. See, I'm at this weird place because I'm non-binary. I'm gender fluid, right? So it's like some days I'm like I want bigger boobs, and some days I'm like I want to chop my boobs off. So I'm like, what if I just chop one off and then get the
Best
other
of
one?
both worlds.
And then I just have to pose depending on the. And then I'm like, no, that's I don't know. So I learned to love my body, and I'm happy with what I got. You know what I mean? I could do without the arthritis. That really sucks. Getting
Yeah.
diagnosed with arthritis at 17 was not something I expected, but
What?
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
no, that
No,
sucks.
I've had my fair share of having to use mobility aids already.
Oh,
like
dang.
wheelchairs, walkers, and stuff like that, and back braces and
Yeah.
all that fun stuff.
My father too. My father got diagnosed with, I think it's arthrosis, which is not exactly the same thing with, but it's the same kind of category, and he got
basically
diagnosed.
inflammation, right?
Yes,
yeah, chronic
at like
inflammation.
27, and he couldn't really. He was playing hockey a lot, and he couldn't really play hockey
Yeah.
that much anymore afterwards.
It's tricky because like I'm doing stretches and trying to work out to like kind of keep my body moving and stuff, but
Yeah.
lately it's been feeling like it's been making it worse, and I don't know like what the
Ah.
balance is like because I'm doing. You see me, I'm doing yoga every day when
Yes.
you're here, and
Yes,
just it still doesn't help. So I don't know.
it's a
Don't know
learning
what
curve
to
to
do.
find the exact balance of what will help and what doesn't, and what makes it worse.
Yeah, because docs are not going to give you painkillers for that. So like, oh, just take a Tylenol, rest, and I'm
Yeah.
like that's gonna actually do it.
Looking fabulous and
But
feeling
looking
fabulous is
No,
not
no.
the same thing, but at
Mutually
least
exclusive.
we look fabulous. Okay, let's do a Defying Gravity a little bit, because
Okay.
I like the song, and you can do
We do look pretty witchy.
we do look pretty witchy.
Yeah.
So let's switch place so
Okay.
I can play it. And actually the chorus comes back a lot. So the na 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 na. You probably
Okay.
gonna have fun with that with your voice.
That's the only part that I know.
Yes, it comes back a lot. And I probably will do
Where did
a
my
version with.
go. I thought
Water.
my.
Wait.
Oh, it's at my foot. Got it.
Water.
Water. I hardly knew her.
Thanks, Squirrel, for bringing me back. So right now, for those who don't know the channel, I am Andy the Frenchie. Celine's been chased away by a dog because she hates dogs. So before she comes back, I want to sing a song for you guys. Normally, I'm not that gothic. Very much a chill streamer with my PJs on. I play Disney music, and you know, we have lots of fun. Although today is very near Halloween, and Celine loves Halloween, and she takes over my body sometimes. So that's what she did today. Thanks for coming back. You're welcome, Squirrel. Thank you very much. So let's sing Defying Gravity. Just at least a little version of Defying Gravity.
I just know the
the
part.
chorus.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's mostly that. It's mostly the chorus that comes back quite a while. And I'll probably not do that part because it's a little bit more tricky. But the beginning is kind of nice though. The Celine, there is no Celine command. Can somebody make a Celine command in the mods?
No, it's
Like
like
just-
Anthem Celine.
Yeah, I know. Oh, there's the Anthem Celine, but there is no explanation.
No explanation.
Normally, there's an explanation on my own channel, but because I don't have my chat bot in here, the Celine, I think it's in my title. I think I put Celine with the exclamation point Celine, but there is no explanation in there. Ça doit bien être une brune sista. Merci, Great Teacher Olive. Ad comes Celine command. We really love Celine. You know what? Do as you wish. I don't even at that point. I could still be with the wizard. What I worked and waited for. I could have all I've ever wanted. But I don't want it. I can't want it anymore. Something has changed within me. Something is not the same. I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. Too late for second guessing. Too late to go back to sleep. It's time to trust my instinct. Close my eyes and leave.
'cause someone says they're sold. Something I cannot change, but till I try, I'll never know. Too long I've been afraid of losing love. I guess I lost. Well, if that's love, it comes too much too high. 'Cause I'd sooner defying gravity. Kiss me goodbye, defying gravity, and you can pull me down.
So we just go to here.
Yes. So if you can't find me, look to the western sky. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves a chance to fly. And if I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free. To those around me, take a message back from me. Tell them I'm defying gravity. I'm flying high, defying gravity, and soon I'll lash gently down. And nobody in all of us knows that there is or was is ever gonna bring me
It's like, what is the note there? Don't even know.
That's yes, but she just
Never
go.
gonna bring me
Well, actually, in the musical, at that point, Elphaba just flies away. She's just like, boom! And it's very majestic. In the musical, she has a harness, and she really lifts up in the air, and you don't see the harness because it's all black. She has this...
Yes,
there's
yes.
wind everywhere. It's just so majestic. Ça te va bien, le gothique? Merci! Mais en fait, c'est Céline. Là, je suis poignée dans son corps présentement jusqu'à ce que quelqu'un me chasse de là. Mais en attendant, je suis encore là. Thank you guys. Okay, we could play like one more song maybe and be done with it. So if you can't find me to the western sky, as someone told me lately, everyone deserves a chance to fly.
Aggressive.
Just a tad.
Be aggressive.
Be aggressive.
Be
Aggressive.
AGGRESSIVE aggressive.
What's the da 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 da? Is that song?
I don't know.
There was a big montage.
No, that's, isn't that?
Yes. So
It's like James Bond.
I've heard that song in a montage where it was part. The Be Aggressive was
That's it.
in. Yes. Da 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 da. I know the rest.
Yo, tell you what I want. What I really, really.
Yeah, we could do it. We could play that. Celine is not coming back anytime soon. She won't mind that I sing some Spice Girls. Yeah, tell me what I want, what I really, really want.
Oh, okay, you can do the thing.
Spice.
How do you do it?
Wannabe.
Anyways.
Riff raff. I'm suspicious now. Don't know you. You don't know me, Benoit. I'm Andy. You've been seeing me the whole time. Who needs Celine? Who needs Celine anyway? That's true. You won't make me out of this body now. I am Celine. Forever. Okay, so
Sorry, I keep yawning.
it's the last song. Let's do it to the last song of the day. Unless something very crazy happened, unless somehow we get to the 666, and I will promise that I will do the sacrifice.
We will sacrifice.
But if not, it's the last song of the day, and it's Wannabe, and probably Celine will not come back.
Let's figure out which. Do you want to do harmonies, melodies?
Okay. I will do harmonies. Unless we do the whole yeah. Well,
So you want me to do the harmonies there?
oh yeah, we can do it. If you wanna be my lover, then live with my friends.
With my friends.
Yes.
All right, because there's a lot of back and forth.
Yes.
We'll just do the back and forth.
Yes. Let's go
Okay,
back and
so
forth.
back and forth. Tell me what I want to do. So tell me.
Wait, I wanna
Okay, perfect.
Just want to be sure. Probably I'll
Only $154 left to sacrifice this cat piano.
sacrifice a cat piano. It might happen. You have one song to make it happen, but okay, and I'll show you guys. And I'm not sacrificing it. Celine will come back. I don't want to be there to sacrifice it. So Celine, if it happens, she'll probably do a painting ritual over that stupid thing. So that's yeah. All right. Okay. If you wanna be my lover, I think that's the good.
Just the lyrics went by. There you go.
Yeah, I just wanted to to have the right chords. Okay, let's see if I have.
Yeah, you can just look up the chords. I do it in it's in the.
Oh, it's just wannabe chords. Let's see if they.
Yeah.
What are the chords?
It's B, D,
Okay,
D,
it's okay.
E, and then.
It makes me think about Grease too. Summer loving, hand me a blast. Anyways.
Oh, I can also do. I'll just-
The auto scroll, yeah. I never thought of using that. Yo, I'll tell you what I want, what I really want. I tell you what you want, what you really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really want. So tell me what you want, what you really want. I wanna really take a day. If you want my future, forget my past. If you wanna get with me, better make it fast. Now don't go wasting my precious time. Get your act together, we could be just fine. Yo, I'll tell you what you want, what I really want. So tell me what you want, what you really want. I wanna really sing. If you want my lover, gotta get with my friends forever. Friendship never ends. If you wanna be my lover, you have got to get. It's too easy, but that's the way it is. So what you think about that? Now you know how I feel. Say you can't handle my love. Are you for real? Want me, hey, still, I give you a try. If you really want me, and I'll say goodbye. Tell you what I want, what I really want. So tell me what you want, what you really want. I wanna really wanna sing a thing. If you wanna be my lover, you gotta get with my friends forever. Friendship never ends. If you wanna be my lover, you have got to get. It's too easy, but that's the way it is.
Here's the story from A to Z. You wanna get with me, you gotta listen carefully. We got M in the place who likes it in the face. You got G like MC who likes it on the easy P. Doesn't come for free, just a really
How you say?
Slap your body down and wind it all around.
Slap your body down and all around. If you wanna be my love, it's great. Gotta get with my friends.
Gotta get with my friends.
Friendship never ends. If you wanna be my lover, you have got to get. It's too easy, but that's the way it is.
flawless. Flawless.
The best of friends.
Flawless.
I was like, you gotta get with my friend.
Gotta get with if you
Gotta
wanna be my lover.
Gotta get with
Gotta
my
get with a
friends.
friend too. It's like a song about this is great. Thank you, Mad Max. I love that.
We
you
are
were
going to
first.
karaoke later. I don't know. We
We
can't
are.
do that. We cannot do that. That's
We
too-
can't not do it. It's
mean-
going to be proper.
I was like, I could do Evanescence like this, or if I take the wig off, I could just do whatever I do.
yes.
I don't know.
Throw
I
away.
usually like to show off. If I'm going to karaoke, I'm not going there to be mediocre. I'm going there to stun the crowd into silence and get.
I might be mediocre. Let's
Be like,
face
who
it,
is that?
kinda
Oh my god, is that Elena Sterling? I'll be like,
like- Whoa.
yes.
That's such a star.
Such a
But, yeah.
star in my
Almost.
small ass town of Ottawa of 1 million people. Wow, so stardom.
So
very very famous. Much,
Much
celebrity.
Much celebrity.
much celebrity.
I can't wait to see all these people just going crazy when you enter the bar and just Alana, I want an autograph. No, me. I want a picture. No, me first. And Andy too.
Yes,
apparently.
that happened a time I actually went out in this wig and I had contacts and like very different look, and I was trying to be like incognito because I was like, I just want to go to a bar and I don't want people to talk to me or recognize me or whatever. And right away someone's like, oh my god, hey Alana, how are you? I'm like,
Wow.
fuck, like I was wearing like a brim hat and like all black hair, like how could you recognize? They're like, look at your face. I'm like, it's still you. I'm like, man,
And also,
doesn't matter what hair I wear, people
You,
can
you
recognize
do
me.
play twice a week. And
Yeah,
so
yeah. I play lots of shows and stuff, and I
There's
also
a
used
lot
to
of
be
people.
big in the metal scene, so everybody in the metal scene knew me, and then
That's why they recognize you
And
with
then-
the black hair.
yeah, exactly.
They knew,
But,
they knew it.
yeah.
Hey guys, we're done, and
We're
Celine is
done.
not back. I'm glad to finish the stream.
I
as
have
usual.
to eject the pizza that I consumed.
go to it.
No,
Please
I have to
feel
say
better.
goodbye to everybody. I can hold it in. This corset is doing a good job of not letting anything move around inside me.
You're
so.
just
I'm
dying
sucked in.
inside right now.
Yes,
Sucked
I'm a
in.
big bubble of gas.
Nothing works. Hey, thank you
Eject.
guys. Eject. Boink. Eject. And the Alana in chat, have a good one. Thank you for the music and stay safe and positive. Thank you.
I love you
Thank
so much,
so
everybody. It was
We
great
are-
to have you.
We're gonna raid. Who are gonna raid again?
Who we gonna
raid?
Who we gonna go and see? Who we gonna go and show some love to? Who we gonna raid? Who we gonna go and see? Who we gonna go and show some love to? Who we gonna raid? Who we gonna go and see? Who we gonna go and show
Have you
some
seen
love
Tyler Labs
to?
lately?
Yes, I've raided him recently.
Okay.
He always raids Joliet. He always raids Joliet. So it always turns into a Joliet raid.
Juliet?
Yeah, Joliet. Sorry, Joliet. Joliet.
Joliet? maybe?
Joliet. I'm
Yes.
like kind of dyslexic with the.
Oh,
the
here
name.
we're on.
Yes,
We're
you can read
there.
Andy the Frenchie.
Andy
These
the
are all the people that I'm
Frenchie.
following, by the way, not the people you're following. That's why you're
I-
confused. You're like, why is there League of Legends streamers on my front page? I'm
I like it. I
You
like
can read
it.
Joe. Just Joe.
Who?
He rated,
Just Joe.
Just
Yes!
Joe rated me recently, so
Okay,
I'd love to
let's-
pay him back.
Let's raid Just Show.
He's
he
wonderful.
is and he has like 4,000 songs.
Yeah, and he's been having a rough time lately.
Yes, let's raid him. No, don't do it. I think we're in
Oh
his
my
chat.
god. I almost typed raid Just Joe Syracuse into Just Joe Syracuse's chat.
That would not have been a giveaway at all.
How come it's not? Oh, did you press pause? Is that why?
No?
Is it broken?
No, I don't think so. I think
Just double check that the stream is working.
Are we working?
Just
Yes,
press,
okay,
press
that,
play.
yeah, it is. This is Joe's. Is he?
Oh, it's a commercial.
Yes,
okay,
it's
okay.
a cover show. We're good.
Okay, there's nobody typing in the chat.
He's
I'm
been
like,
he's been on for an hour, so
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
good. We should be good. And you would
Okay.
never make that mistake, never. Oh yes, true. for the ones who are actually on this channel, because it's my channel.
is it on Saturdays?
It's
2
on
years?
Saturday.
Okay, perfect. So I
I'm
can-
doing
I can
my-
probably tune in.
My special stream for
Dos
them.
Anos.
Those años, it's a Halloween celebration at the same
Yeah.
time. We'll have some fun. We'll play some
Yeah.
games. You do. Thank you for everybody who were here.
Yeah, and all the donations. You guys are a wonderful, incredible. It's so cool to be able to not only have a bunch of fun, but also
Yes.
to get paid doing what we love, because you guys support us. You literally pay our bills,
and
Yes.
pay for, you know, the car, the gas, the food, the everything. So
It's super appreciated, and
you.
the both stream that we've done here will be all split between the two of
Yeah.
us, and
Yeah.
it helps us doing more collabs like that
yeah,
because
and it takes time to look this beautiful. So even
Yes.
though we've only streamed for 4 hours, we've been getting ready for about
since noon.
just as much time since we woke up, basically.
Yes, since we woke up at noon and then we went in to put some
Pretty
makeup on.
much.
Yep.
Pretty much. But yeah, love you so much. My next stream is going to be on Friday.
Good. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow we're doing a live stream from the bar. I play at the bar every Friday night in Ottawa. So if you're close by Ottawa, you can come on down. If you're not in Ottawa, you can get the full bar experience. It's just like you're there at the bar with people from the comfort of your own home. So if you're an introvert, like, don't even worry about it. You don't have to leave your house to be around people, you know? And
You
yeah.
don't even need to. It's all taken care of. Oh no. Okay, yes, let's do it. What's
Hi, baby.
Don't worry about it.
Get this parrot off my
What's
sail.
sail, what's sail on over the town? Our coast is right then, our well it is round. Our boat it is made of the white maple tree. Of the white maple tree.
To the nearest the cherry and to his right cheek. Bring us and our master a good piece of meat.
And a good piece of meat that we already see. The white maple tree. What's sail, what's sail on the town? Our coast is white and our well is round. Our boat is made of the white maple tree. The white maple tree. So that's one of my alerts.
Oh, we did it at the. We did it.
I think yes. Wait. When you came, so that's the West Sail alert. Thank you, Apocalypse Squirrel, with
Thank
the
you for the
27 and 77 and Miali music. And
Also,
Mira.
if you donated and we didn't play you a song, come by another time when
Yes.
it's not as crazy, and
Yes.
we'll make sure that you get a song. Because it's tricky when we have different song lists. We have completely different song lists. and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm just gonna.
Yeah,
So-
and also Maestro, I think you did donate, and I didn't play Falling Slowly, which is a very lovely song on Saturday on our next stream. Please remind me of giving you a coin for that, because I know that a coin in there. Thank you very much. We saved the cat piano. I'm very happy. I don't have to sacrifice
Yes.
it.
And the whole stream is recorded, so it will be posted on the YouTubes afterwards.
It's very true.
Along with the other one from Tuesday will be posted on YouTube, because we have to take it off Twitch because of DMCA.
The MCA. I live in the danger, and I keep them on. I have my sub-only VODs enabled for like a week, and afterwards they go to YouTube. So I'm just living
on the edge.
living on the edge for now. We'll see.
That's
what I
okay.
do.
Why? Honestly, you just typing in chat, you just being here, hanging
Yes.
out, being so supportive and so friendly, and just keeping the compliment juice coming out, you know?
Yes, I never
I
want
said that
anybody
weird though.
to give money because it's not
Yeah.
it's not an obligation. You here you support the stream by being there, by contributing to the amount of people watching, and being like just super fun to hang out with, and that is already super cool for us. We do love everybody that does that. So don't feel obligated to donate. If you don't have the money, it would only make me feel bad. So on that note, we should get to Just Joe and give him lots of love. So raid $, raid Just Joe. Oops.
Oh my god.
Syracuse. I'm a
There you go,
pro.
you got it.
There, everything. Okay, we should use. We have the behold. No. We should have a special command. Okay, wait. Me. Yeah, where is?
This is why I want the desk with the pole thing,
Goth.
like you have.
Goth and the
Oh my gosh.
and the unicorn.
He's not gonna know what's going on.
And did a unicorn race. I love it. Okay, so let's go with. We don't have Goth. No, there's not Goth.
Merm
in there.
Satan. Merm
Oh,
Satan.
there's a Merm Satan we can use.
Yeah, that's my goth emo.
I don't know if lots of people. Oops.
I don't think I have it. Wait,
Well, then
am
they
I
should
not?
sub to me.
Yeah, why am I not sub to you? Okay,
You
wait,
were
let's go
this
with that.
morning.
I was. Did my sub run out?
That's weird.
Merms. Oh no, I saw it.
Yeah, you have okay.
Merms Satan.
You
Oh,
probably
wait.
just typed it wrong. It's
Satan?
Merms.
Oh,
Satan.
Merms Satan. That's
Not
it.
Merms Aiton.
Well, take that and
Take
just
it and spam it.
make it something. Spam. And on that note, I don't have the credits, so I'll just. Nothing will is likely to happen. Be while you're still young. This is serious.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Stop recording and stop streaming.